Apologize for being 5 minutes late. Managed to extend my council presidency by a few minutes.
I see what's going on.
Nobody was confused about that. Well, welcome to the first session of the 19th Council. And we will begin today, as we often do, with an invocation. We're joined by Rabbi Rachel Ackerman from Temple Shalom. Rabbi Ackerman. And please rise as you're able.
We are moving into the darkest part of the year. The days are shorter and colder. We yearn to retreat into our heated homes, cozy under the warm covers. For many of us, it is difficult during the season to muster up the energy to begin anew. And yet, here we are at a beginning, a new county council on a new endeavor to better our community. In a time of darkness, may this council be a beacon of light. May they serve with compassion and warmth, in justice and in love. May they always be in awe of the power and responsibility of their leadership. May they each bring forth their most authentic selves, and may they lead both from the strength of their convictions as well as with an empathetic ear. May their individual candles illuminate their unique passions, hopes, and strengths, and may they also be guided to shine those lights forth together as one, brightly and with abundant radiance toward the path that leads to an ever stronger, healthier, and whole community. May it be so. Amen.
All right. Boy, it's real. How about this? It's nice to see some friendly new faces at the County Council. So the procedure for this morning, I'll make some brief comments, and then we'll proceed to the election of council officers, and the gavel will pass. And so again, welcome to our new council members, Mr. Jawando, Mr. Albornoz, Mr. Glass, Mr. Friedson. Really excited to have you here. We all are. Congratulations. And as you have seen from our agenda for state legislation, you don't get a second to think here. It's right into the fire.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we were actually going easy on you, aren't we? We put a lot of things onto the January agenda to give you a chance. Well, welcome and good morning. And welcome to the first session of the 19th Council. Since I'm concluding my term as Council President today, it's my honor to share some reflections on the past year. First, I want to say thank you to my family, my wife Angela, my boys Travis and Henry. And I think I'll say thank you to them on behalf of everyone who serves in elected office and in public service. It's really an incredible challenge that is only possible if family is behind you fully, and we really rely upon the support of those around us to make it possible, and we really appreciate our family's sacrifice when we enter public service. I want to thank my colleagues from the 18th Council. We were a great team. I will appeal to the new council members to humor us as I read some of the accomplishments in a moment of the 18th Council. I know you were following them closely as you were in your campaigns for the council through really the entire year of this 18th Council. So a lot of it will be familiar. But it was an exciting year. And I know that the new council members will find that this is really a special place. And that is because of the strong culture of respect and professionalism and collegiality that allows us to have differences and work through them and get great results for the people of our county. And I know that each of our new council members will fit in very well with that environment. We could never do the work that we do without the support of the terrific teams that are in our offices and on our professional merit staff, our talented analysts and attorneys, our deep thinkers at the Office of Legislative Oversight, the dedicated folks that keep the trains running in the clerk's office, the Legislative Information Service, Legislative Information Office. Particularly, I want to thank the leadership team of the Executive Director, Marlene Michelson, Clerk Megan Lamarzi, and Legislative Information Officer Sonia Healy. All three of you stepped into new roles this year and didn't miss a beat. I want to thank my staff, Ken Silverman. Where's Ken? There he is in the back. Tommy Hybor, Tommy, and Jason Fasto, and Kathy Mitchell. And I've got a few new participants in my team, Partap Verma and Teddy Osias. They'll be serving in supporting roles going forward. Thank you all for your hard work and dedication. Ken, you made it look easy. I'm not sure how you did that, but that is the mark of a true professional. And thank you so much. You did a fantastic job this year. So without further ado, I present the top 10 council accomplishments of 2018. I confess I arranged these. There's actually no humor as you begin to chuckle. There's no humor here. Sorry, there should be, but maybe that's for a different day. But looking back on our year together, number 10, yeah, right, top 10, that's a Letterman thing, right, yeah, sorry to disappoint. Yes, they're supposed to get funnier and funnier instead of drier and drier. So, we convened the council's first emergency session to respond to the GOP Congress's Tax Act, passing legislation to allow county residents to prepay their 2018 property taxes in 2017 and maximize their state and local tax deductions. Number 9, now that actually happened in 2017, I confess. It was, as you all remember, it was a holiday extravaganza. Number 9, we approved funds to support organizations that provide legal assistance to county residents who are in deportation proceedings. Grants have been provided to Kids in Need of Defense, which helps children who have been separated from their families, as well as HIAS and other groups. And HIAS, unfortunately, you may remember, was one of the groups targeted in the Tree of Life shooting, or it was their work that resulted in the targeting. We funded, number 8, we funded a revised stormwater infrastructure program that will ensure efficiency and affordability while maximizing environmental benefits. We negotiated a solution to overcome an executive veto, and we approved a 10-year update to the county's water and sewer plan. That was arduous. We supported, number 7, the county's bid for Amazon HQ2, including a zoning plan to streamline the process for corporate headquarters to locate in the county. Number 6, we approved a zoning change for the agricultural reserve in the county, enabling business owners there to operate wineries, breweries, distilleries, and cideries. Number 5, we adopted a visionary bicycle master plan to guide the future of biking infrastructure in the county and added funding for a Bethesda protected bike lane loop in addition to the Silver Spring protected bike lane loop under construction. I will say the order of these is, there's not a particular thing here, but number 4, we approved a zoning change to support additional wireless infrastructure, known as 4G leading to 5G in downtown and commercial areas, and consideration continues on residential areas. Number 3, we supported major capital investment in WMATA. Locally, we funded new pedestrian access entrances for the White Flint and Forest Glen metros. We successfully advocated to expand rush hour service from Grosvenor to Shady Grove, and a similar expansion on the Glenmont side is under study by WMATA. Number 2, we enacted legislation to increase affordable housing in the county by increasing the minimum percentage of MPDUs that are required to be built in new residential developments in high-income areas of the county. We modernized the MPDU ordinance generally and established a clear MPDU incentive structure for bonus density. And number 1, always at the council, we approved a $5.6 billion fiscal year 2019 operating budget without raising taxes. The budget fully funded the Board of Education's request for Montgomery County Public Schools, and including an additional $3.3 million for expanded pre-K programs, raising the 2-year total of early education expansions to over $7 million, and creating more than 650 new full-day pre-K slots, for a total of about 3,200 children attending publicly funded pre-K programs. The council also added Excel Beyond the Bell after-school programs at 2 additional elementary schools. Finally, to better engage our residents in this important work, we took another step forward in our council communications program. At the beginning of this year, I announced a new feature on the council's website, a subscription service that allows residents to get real-time email updates as legislation that they're interested in advances through the process. Our Public Information Office is continuing to expand this service to new categories of documents and develop new ways to subscribe to topics so that the public can stay informed about our work without having to proactively monitor our website. Today, I'm very pleased to announce that in addition to providing new ways to get information from the council, we have finally developed a new way for residents to share their thoughts with us, something I've been working on all year. The Public Information Office will assign each piece of legislation a social media hashtag as it is introduced, which will be publicized along with the public hearing date. Analysts and attorneys will track social media posts, good luck with that, Jeff Zions, using that hashtag to collect relevant and novel comments and questions on the legislation and present them to us along with the oral and written testimony we are used to getting. Now, if residents aren't able to attend a public hearing or don't feel comfortable writing a letter or email to the council, they can post on Facebook or Twitter and know that their contributions will be part of the public debate. Sonia Healy, thank you so much for your team's formulation of this terrific approach. And thank you again to everyone who participated in our terrific year, and I look forward to even greater things ahead in 2019. Thank you again to my colleagues. Thank you. And now we will call for nominations for, wait, the lights aren't on. All right. We will call for nominations for council president. Is there a nomination for our next council president? Mr. Hucker.
Thank you, current council president. First, I want to thank you, Hans, for your leadership the last year. That was a very effective accounting of our accomplishments, and to think you pulled that all off in election year when we had a lot of challenging issues in front of us and a lot of demands on all of our schedules is really a tribute to your leadership. And we did, I think I'm happy with the job everybody did together working with you this year. But I'm honored right now to nominate our council vice president, Nancy Navarro, for a second term as council president. I'm really happy to be doing this because I've always felt a kinship with Nancy. Maybe it's because we both started and ran nonprofit corporations and know how difficult that is. Maybe it's because we're both passionate about so many of the same issues. But I think it's probably because we're both immigrants. Yes, it's true. We both came here from a failed state, far away, a troubled land with deep civil divisions, a dysfunctional government, and a collapsing economy. Obviously, I'm referring to Missouri. Nancy graduated, if you didn't know, from the University of Missouri with a psychology degree, which helps her every day in dealing with all of us. So I want to talk, though, about Nancy's leadership in her district, in this chamber, and beyond our walls. First, we all know Nancy's widely admired by her constituents, especially in areas that have long felt like they don't get enough attention, like Glenmont and Wheaton. The Seventh State blog describes her as a fierce, relentless advocate for Wheaton who makes sure the area gets its fair share of county dollars. We all know Wheaton is being transformed by the new planning headquarters, by the new library and rec center, and Seventh State says Nancy is, quote, a big reason why. And Nancy, I want to thank you for your consistent advocacy for East County, which you represented before me in the old districts. I'm grateful I've always been able to count on your support for the BRT, for the East County Enterprise Zone, for the Maydale Nature Center, and all the improvements we've been able to bring to East County over the last 4 years. It might be your relentless advocacy for your communities that allowed Nancy, of course, to pull off a political magic trick in 2016 when she convinced the exact same voters who were voting for term limits for all of us to give her 4 more years on the council. She's now our longest serving council member. You know, polls often show that the public dislikes Congress in general, but loves their individual council members. And I think those election results show whatever the public thinks about the council as in the abstract, they love Nancy Navarro. As a leader of this council, Nancy's been both an effective leader on the Board of Education and this council. She's been a consistent, outspoken voice for affordable childcare and healthcare and pre-K. And she's also led, it's gotten less attention, but the groundbreaking Latino Civic Project to increase civic education and strengthen communications with underrepresented communities, which is so important because she's such a great role model as the first Latina and first immigrant serving on the council. And most dramatically, as our government operations and fiscal policy chair, Nancy steered the council through our severe financial struggles during the Great Recession. She made smart decisions that prioritized vital county functions despite deep and severe fiscal constraints. And by doing so, Nancy helped accomplish another magic trick, protecting our cherished AAA bond rating under those circumstances, giving us the distinction of being the only county to hold that rating from each of the 3 credit agencies as long as there have been bond ratings. Nancy also represents us so well outside this chamber. She serves on the board for the Metro Washington Council of Governments. President Obama asked Nancy to serve on the President's Commission for Educational Excellence for Hispanics to take advantage of her years as a child care entrepreneur, as a school board member, a PTA leader, and a council member to allow education policy makers everywhere the benefit of her experience. And those roles have given her not only a larger platform to help share her experience and wisdom with a larger audience, it's helped inform our policies as she's brought those lessons back to us, informing our policies on transportation, immigration, education, and many other areas. But the thing I think I appreciate the most is Nancy's insistence on high expectations for today's Montgomery County. Nancy has never been satisfied and complacent with where we are. She consistently urges us to do better, not in some theoretical sense, but specifically better for our young people, better for our residents who are too often left behind. I think it's not just rooted in the optimism and hope that's a big part of her personality, but it's in the fact that she came here from somewhere else. So she's not burdened by nostalgic, sepia-filtered memories of bygone days in a simpler Montgomery County. She's never satisfied by the voices who tell us often that's just how things are here or that's how things have always been. Year after year, Nancy has fearlessly or relentlessly held up a mirror to Montgomery County and challenged us to see the county we have become rather than the one we used to be. And I love that she issues that challenge, not just because it's a truth that needs to be told, but because she knows that image, the image of today's Montgomery County, presents us not only with the right starting place for public policy making, but because it's something we should be very, very proud of. And that's not just rhetoric. She's used that image to push for and win policy changes by convincing people to embrace our new reality. And now the county will systematically take that approach to policy making in the coming years as we adopt the new equity lens that she's championed. So for all those reasons, I can't think of a better council member to lead us through the next year of transition, with talk of restructuring county government, with new council members, with a new county executive, and lots of new staff members. So I look forward to seeing her back in the president's chair, and I know all of you do too. And so I enthusiastically nominate Nancy Navarro as president of the Montgomery County Council. It needs a second.
I heard it does not need a second, but I think, yeah, exactly. Mr. Jawando would like to offer his first second of the 19th Council. All right.
Well played.
Very good. We will now vote on our next council president. So this will be a show of hands. Nominations are closed. All those in favor of electing Nancy Navarro as president of the Is it president of the 19th Council, or it's president for the first year of the 19th Council? Thank you very much. Show of hands. And that is unanimous. Very good. And now we will rearrange the, no.
I think I'm gonna-
Oh, okay. Very good. Nancy Navarro.
Thank you, thank you. We have one more particular item that we have to dispose of, very important. I would like to call for nominations for vice president. And I think I have Mr. Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. That sounds familiar. I am very happy and pleased to see you in the leadership seat again and look forward to great things this upcoming year. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm not necessarily a big fan of cats. And
This is going to go downhill real fast. I can see that. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that's good.
But over these past 4 years, I can tell you that I've certainly softened to the idea of how important cats are for me. And you've heard before my conversations about my respect for people who dedicate themselves to public service, who really want to see their community change for the better, who want to continue to fight for those who are struggling, who want to make sure that everybody has a pathway to success, and who firmly believes that everybody has a place at the table and should be respected. And those are the qualities that certainly exemplify my colleague, Councilmember Sidney Katz. He's at the top of the list when it comes to people who always respect every single person who comes before him. It's something that's in his DNA, and it's something that certainly is a quality that has allowed him to be successful in so many roles. I don't think that there's ever a person who's lived in Montgomery County who knows as many people as Sidney Katz does. I was at a family reunion once, and Sidney knew more people than I did. I was floored. I didn't know his roots spread all the way down to South Carolina, but apparently that's the case. Sidney's commitment when it comes to ensuring that something that challenges our community now, which is mental health and the scourge of us not providing the services that we need to for all of our residents, is something that he's been incredibly passionate about and has led as our lead on mental health on this council, including formulating the mental health court, which has done tremendous things. And I encourage anyone to go to one of those mental health court graduations and just hear the stories from those people about lives that have been changed. Ultimately, end of the day, that's what our job is. Our job is to ensure that we're doing everything we can to make people's lives better. You know, the Washington Post said in endorsing Sidney, he's a consensus builder whose down-to-earth, practical brand of politics reflects a career spent on building relationships. He combines a sense of decency with a broad streak of independence. And I tell you, folks, certainly for this upcoming council, I think that we could not have a better vice president than Councilmember Sidney Katz, and I'd like to nominate him for that position.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't see any more lights, so this nomination process is closed for vice president, but all those in favor to elect Councilmember Sidney Katz as vice president, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Okay, as it is customary, I will be presenting the gavel to our outgoing president, Hans Riemer. As has been stated before, Councilmember Riemer, you really did steer us through a very interesting year with a lot of surprises and a budget that really included many of the priorities of our residents in a fiscally sustainable fashion. But you also led us into really important forward-thinking opportunities in this county, specifically when it comes to looking at our transit-oriented developments, our ability to be more bike-friendly, all of those things that my daughters really love. And it's all about thinking not just about the present, but also the future. And so for that, I'm really grateful, and I really do appreciate everything that you have done with a steady hand. So for that, here it is, Hans Riemer, President, Montgomery County Council, 2017-2018.
All right.
We'll stand up for a photo, I think, yes?
Very nice.
Very cool. You can add it to your wall of awards. Right now as well, if there are any other comments with regards to our outgoing president, this is the moment. If anybody wants to make some remarks. If Councilmember, let me see, I'm going to try to figure out the lights. Katz, yes.
Thank you very much. And first off, congratulations to Hans and to Nancy, obviously. And I certainly look forward to working with everyone and as a vice president with Nancy. And I want to welcome the new members as well. I mean, I was teasing them. They came in. This is like the first day of school for some of us. You know, everybody's trying to figure out what class we're in. But Hans, candidly, this year was a very interesting year, as has been noted several times. We certainly have looked at legislation that needed to be looked at, and sometimes it just didn't seem to get that puzzle to fit together. And this is a new legislative body, and we're going to work on that in a continual basis so that we can get some, the legislation that's necessary through. This last year, every year it seems that our budget process becomes tougher and tougher, and this next year is not going to be any easier. I mean, and so, but you were able to literally shepherd us through a very tough budget year, and when they said that 50 people had affected our budget in Montgomery County, and you kept thinking, really, 50 people? But that's what happened, and though I do know a lot of people, I don't think I knew any of the 50. That I would have called them if I knew. But candidly, we thank you for all that you have done, and certainly are going to be continuing doing, and you certainly did a great job during a time when it always seemed that it was a little difficult to get through it. So congratulations.
Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. Councilmember Reamer, I was talking to some folks last night at our inaugural gala and was talking about when you and I had first met when we were first running for office in downtown Silver Spring. I don't know if you remember, we sat at a restaurant that was on the upper tier in the Silver Spring Town Center. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but we were sitting there and talking and strategizing about how we were going to take over the council, I remember. For our new colleagues that are coming in, let me tell you, that's something that went out the window quick. Let me just say this. It's been a long road for us. We came in as the young guns, right? And it's been 8 years now. I mean, that's what we had kind of secretly dubbed ourselves. I'm putting all our business out there, but it's for a reason. We've grown so much in these positions. And being council president is a unique opportunity that really gives you the ability to grow as a council member. It gives you great responsibility, not only for yourself in terms of making sure that you're making the best decisions, but also in guiding this body forward. It is not an easy job at all. And you did a great job in shepherding us through some very tough times. We had some very difficult issues that were challenges. And I think that, again, you really led with integrity. You made sure that you reached out to folks and tried to collaborate as best as possible with our colleagues to make sure that folks understood the issues that were before us and why we needed to try and move forward in the best interests of our community. It's not easy to do, and you did a great job doing it. And so I just want to say thank you because, again, as I've said before, this job ain't easy, and leading us is even harder. And so I just really want to thank you. I want to thank your staff who did a great job as well, working with all of our staffs and really making sure that we had a great and successful year and continue to move Montgomery County forward. So thank you for all your great work.
Trying to keep up with the lights. Let me see. I believe it's Councilmember Albornoz. See, the lights are out of order over here, so it's really rough to see. Okay, I'll do Albornoz and then Jawando. We'll put Jawando next.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. It's still getting adjusted to sitting on this side of the aisle, but I had the opportunity to sit on that side of the aisle for 12 years and had the opportunity to work directly with you, Councilmember Reiner, on expanding and closing the opportunity gap among our youth, particularly in the STEM space. I appreciated your leadership, the collaboration of your remarkable office. It was a unique year on a number of different levels, unprecedented in many ways, and you led with great stewardship. I look forward to working with you. I also appreciate you reaching out early on in this process with guidance and advice and support, which meant a lot to me personally. And I look forward to working with you. And point of privilege, I especially look forward to working with you, Councilmember Navarro. We've worked together on a number of community issues over many years. I'm excited about your leadership role and that you are at the helm, especially in this first year of great transition. So it's an honor to be here, and I look forward to serving with everybody on this dais. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Council President Navarro. That sounds good. Former council president or immediate past, Andrew Friedson and I often joke that's the best job on a nonprofit board, immediate past president. I don't think you're going to get that here, but you still got to make tough decisions. But I've known Hans a long time, over 10 years. We both go back to the 08 Obama days, where we were, wish we were there now. But and he's a good friend. He was at my first campaign kickoff, stepped out when others didn't and supported me. Like all good friends, we had disagreements over the years, but we come back together, and I'm really, really looking forward to serving with you. It's an honor. I'm glad I made it just in time with the term limits to serve with you and Craig and with Nancy, and it's going to be an exciting, exciting year. I think I also want to take a point of privilege with Nancy and Sydney. I could not think of two greater leaders to be the president and vice president coming out of the election season we just had, dealing with the national climate we've had, and I think it's a great step as this council, the 19th, is seated today, that we had 2 9-0 votes, and we're going to start off with you two at the helm. I'm really, really excited. So looking forward, Hans, to working with you. Congratulations on all you did, and Nancy and Sid, look forward to your leadership as well.
Councilmember Glass.
Echoing the sentiments of my colleagues, I want to thank Council Member Reamer for the year that you've been leading as an astute observer of everything that's been going on in the council, particularly the last year. I know leading the council and running in a very crowded primary is a hard thing to do, and you succeeded, so thank you. And we first got to know each other in the mid-aughts, as both of us were working to make Silver Spring a better place to live, work, and play. And I look forward to continuing that workmanship with you over the next 4 years. And also the incoming current leadership, Vice President Katz, I look forward to working with you, continuing our work. And for President Navarro, personally, I was raised by a strong female, a strong woman, and I look forward to being led by one here on the council for the next year.
That's so cool. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and echo a lot of the comments that have been said. Hans, you and I met each other also on the 2008 Obama campaign. I'm a few years younger, so I was actually still student body president at University of Maryland. But to date myself a little bit, but we were able to work together, most importantly, to engage more people in the process, which I think is a pursuit that started for you and by extension for me in those days and has continued here in your public service. And we share an interest in building a modern economy and building a modern county where people can access it and can live and can grow and can get to be a part of what has always made Montgomery County such a special place. And I look forward to continuing that work together. And echoing the comments that have been said about our vice president and our president, I couldn't think of two people who are more enmeshed in the community than the two of you, who really have your ear to the ground and really understand the needs and the wants and the desires. And so I look forward to learning. I look forward to being able to work together with both of you, and I have a lot to learn, but couldn't think of two people who I can lean on to work together, and also the rest of the council. I think we have an incredible group of public servants, and it's just a profound honor to be able to serve with each of you and to serve the county that we all love. So thank you.
Thank you. And for, the new young guns, just understand that it changes very quickly. Remember, Councilmember Florini used to call me kiddo all the time, and then all of a sudden she just stopped. It's like, what happened? The years went by. So, well, thank you, Councilmember Hucker, for that extraordinary nomination. It was really, really great to kind of sit back and hear all of this, because what you'll find, especially for our new council members, is that this work is so important and so extraordinary that you oftentimes have a hard time just reflecting on everything that you've been able to do. And that is, I think, the nature of our county and the work that you will be embarking on. And I know that my returning council members feel the same way. So it's interesting to kind of hear a bit of a summary once in a while. It kind of makes you tired just to hear it. But so let me say that, first, I really want to thank the voters of my district for honoring me with yet another 4 years to serve them. It is an incredible privilege. I promise to continue to serve with the same dedication and resolve as I have done for the past 9 years. I want to thank my awesome family, my husband Reginald, and our daughters Anais and Isabel, for providing me with the inspiration, the ability, and the courage to step up and serve in public office. A heartfelt thank you to my work family, the Navarro team. It's right now comprised of Ikaid Roland Ikeloa, Berta Flores, Craig Wilson, Mayra Cruz Solis, and Benjamin Price. And there have been so many other outstanding staff members who have gone on to better things. I often say that I have a little HR office going on where I just kind of groom people and they go on to better things, which is really wonderful. And of course, I want to thank our council staff, which is so extraordinary and really is the backbone of everything that we do. I want to thank them for their professionalism and absolute dedication to this work. It's really an amazing thing to see. Well, thank you, colleagues, for trusting me with the leadership of this council, having served as president first on the Board of Education and then on this council in 2013. My priority is to make sure that our work as a body is seamless, productive, and accountable to our residents. We will do this together as a team. We will confront the opportunities and challenges ahead through a framework of productive collaboration. My promise is to build upon the work of the leaders before me and to extend the conversation and direct the work in new, equitable ways to reflect the needs of our changed county. It is the right thing to do, and I welcome the opportunity to work with you, my colleagues, County Executive Mark Elridge, key leaders in our community, and stakeholders on new and exciting initiatives. This has been a year of change. As we usher in a new council, it is appropriate to salute our colleagues who just retired from the council. Roger Berliner, Mark Elridge, Nancy Florine, and George Leventhal. As a group, they collectively contributed decades of active and incredibly productive service to Montgomery County. Our county is better for their service. I hope that they will all continue to avail us of their expertise in the interest of the county as a whole. Of course, I want to again thank outgoing Council President Hans Riemer for his leadership during this past year. He definitely led us through a comprehensive and challenging budget season and kept alive the conversation on several issues, many of which were very controversial. I'm proud to continue to serve with council members Tom Hucker, Sidney Katz, and Craig Rice, all outstanding public servants. And I'm pleased to welcome council members Gabe Albornoz, Evan Glass, Andrew Friedson, and Will Joando. I know each of you personally, and I can confidently say that your expertise, passion for the work, and temperament will be huge assets to this team. As we transition to a new era of leadership, it is appropriate to reflect on our past accomplishments. We have done great and courageous work, sometimes under trying circumstances. As it was said before, we have maintained our AAA bond rating even through the recession, making us the only county that has maintained this rating since 1973. We survived the recession and we closed a crushing deficit while making education the safety net and ensuring that redevelopment and revitalization remain top priorities throughout the county. We can do even more for all our residents. The watchword for me is equity, and I'm passionately determined to continue that work as president of this great council. It is interesting, as I was reflecting on today, I happened to revisit the speech I made in December of 2012 as incoming president of the council. I talked about us being one Montgomery. Today, as we sit here, my words still ring true, and they bear repeating. To me, one Montgomery means recognizing the differences among us, while emphasizing that however different our backgrounds or our lifestyles may be, we are all connected. We all depend on each other. We all share the same need for a government that encourages economic growth, protects our families, educates our children, and provides a safety net in case we fall on hard times. Being one Montgomery means making progress together, because even if we don't always agree on every detail, we share a common set of core values. It is an honor to sit on this dais with a group of public servants who, faced with very difficult choices, were able to take unified action for the common good. But one Montgomery also means embracing our diversity. Our county is incredibly diverse by any measure you can think of. Our residents come from across the country and around the world, from every socioeconomic class. We have students and young professionals living in urban high-rises, teachers and police officers starting families in garden apartments, lawyers, small business owners, and cabinet secretaries in houses lining quiet cul-de-sacs, and everything else in between. We even have working farms in historic small towns, all right next to the jobs and amenities of our nation's capital. As you can see, the work of keeping a changed county, one Montgomery, remains even more urgent today. As we witness daily attacks on our core values from the highest office in the nation, we must double down on our resolve to defend the fundamental core values of inclusion, respect, and freedom here at home. I am pleased to say that the work has begun. This past year, our council as a team unanimously affirmed our commitment to the creation of an equity policy through the adoption of a resolution. In that historic action, the council signaled that it will begin to address inequities in our communities in structural ways, that our words will be matched with the intentional action. To kick off this important work, this January, we will be convening a first ever equity training for council members and key leaders of our county, followed by an extensive community engagement with the aim of adopting legislation in the fall of 2019. We are going to be looking at this issue squarely in the eye and addressing it. In my tenure on the council, I have focused on a few core priorities that are designed to improve the quality of life of our children and adults. In the coming months, I'll be working with my council colleagues to collectively address the following priorities as a team. Closing the opportunity gap in academic achievement. Montgomery County is a great place to live and work, but there are persistent opportunity gaps that must be confronted. Montgomery County Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Jack Smith has called closing the opportunity gap that exists among races and ethnicities in our schools a moral imperative. I would add that it is an economic imperative as well, and we should all work with him and the Board of Education to ensure that academic success for all means all. Early care and education. Implementing a high-quality, accessible, and affordable early care and education initiative in Montgomery County is also an economic imperative. We must be strategic and invest in the early years. The research is clear that it is the best return on investment and prepares all our children to be ready to learn. We know what works, and we know the scope of the need, and while we have assets in place, it is not enough to make a significant difference. As I began saying as far back as 2011, we must establish a dedicated funding stream that allows us to scale up our delivery of quality services and make a real impact in the lives of our children. I envision a phased-in initiative that starts with the neediest children and incorporates family child care providers, private centers, community-based centers, intergenerational programs, the school system, the Resource and Referral Center, Judy Centers, and Montgomery College. These partnerships would allow us to leverage training, technical assistance, and mentoring to promote quality services. If we are serious about maintaining our competitive edge as a county and as a nation, the work of preparing our future workforce for a rapidly evolving job market must start with a robust early care and education system. Implementing a senior agenda. Our demographic data shows that we have a rapidly growing and active aging population. In my recent travels across the county and meeting with our senior residents, I have been impressed by the level of civic engagement and willingness to be a part of the exciting things happening in our county. As we begin to think of a strategic vision for our county, we must intentionally and strategically prioritize the needs and concerns of our seniors in our decision-making process. Redevelopment, revitalization, and more jobs. I'm extremely proud of the revitalization and redevelopment efforts in our county, especially the efforts in White Oak and Wheaton. We just broke down on the new Route 29 corridor bus rapid transit service, and we continue to build more and more housing. But we need to do more, and we will. This council has a responsibility to improve conditions throughout the county as we seek to expand our tax base. On civic engagement, throughout my career, I have been proud to lead the charge in fostering civic engagement among our county's diverse communities. I've done this work through several innovative programs, such as the Latino Civic Project, which is designed to empower our Latino community through respectful and effective civic engagement, as well as helping our institutions adapt to a changing world. Our residents have been empowered to weigh in on several issues, including land use and development, voting rights, and budgetary decisions. Our council should continue to take a proactive stance and push for institutional adaptations that enable all communities in our county to fully participate in the civic process. Making Montgomery County friendly for businesses. Everything I have said today is ultimately tied to a desired goal: to extend our tax base by building a well-educated workforce for now and the future, and creating a friendly business environment for all small, medium, and large businesses. I'm proud of my work with our colleagues in creating opportunities like the Small Business Assistance Program to assist small businesses owners whose livelihoods would be directly impacted by county-led revitalization projects, and the microloan program. This allows aspiring entrepreneurs to access needed funding and technical assistance, and enabling small businesses to be competitive in a rapidly changing county. That is one sure way to expand access and opportunities for all as well. In summary, I hope that by the end of my tenure as council president, I have shepherded the work of this team through this transition. We will truly be on the path of a changed Montgomery becoming one Montgomery. I thank all of you here this morning, and I can't wait to start the work on behalf of this great county. Thank you very much. All right. And now I believe that we were going to have a brief recess so that we can play musical chairs. Thank you. Everybody, I think we're getting ready to start again. Council members, friends. Did everybody leave? Everybody's getting back. Wonderful. So we're going to start with our agenda of the day. We'll begin with general business. And I want to turn to Ms. Limarcy to see if there are any announcements.
Thank you. Good morning. The council is again seeking applicants for the Board of Appeals. This position can only be filled by an individual who is not a registered Democrat. So it may be filled by a Republican, a voter who is unaffiliated with a party, or a voter of a member of another party officially recognized by the Board of Elections. The application deadline is January 4th, 2019 at 5 p.m. The council has not received any petitions this week.
Thank you. And so now we will move on to item C. This is the approval of minutes. The minutes for November 13th, 15th, 2018 have been distributed in advance to all council members. Are there any corrections? I don't see any lights. If there are no further corrections, then the minutes are approved as distributed. Wonderful. Now we are going to move on to item 3, and this is a discussion regarding our legislative update, state legislative update. I believe we have Ms. Melanie Wenger here. We do have, I'm sorry, before we move on to that, there is an approval of closed session minutes as well. Do we need to vote on that? No, just same thing. Okay. And so those were also distributed, and this is for closed session November 13th and 15th. Been distributed in advance. If there are any corrections, please signal. I don't see any, so therefore those will be accepted. Okay. So now we'll move on to state legislative program. Welcome. How are you? So just for my colleagues, just to let them know, this is our state legislative update by Ms. Melanie Wenger and her team, our intergovernmental legislative liaison. Usually the process is for us to, of course, walk through each piece of legislation, and then colleagues are asked whether they want to support, and we can vote on whether we want to take a council position. Obviously, everybody is like literally fresh from swearing in yesterday, and so what I like to do is for us to go through each bill, and then we can have a conversation where everybody might be on them. I know the council Member Reamer said that maybe there are a couple of, items that he would like for us to take positions on, but this will be really an opportunity for us to ask questions. We don't need to take a position. I assume the county executive, has the county executive taken
He
any
has.
positions?
He has,
Okay,
and
so we
we'll
can
share
go
that
through-
information with
We
you.
can go through that. And so let's see how it goes, depending on the will of the body. If there are outstanding questions, you can forward them to my chief of staff, Roland Ikaloa, and then we'll share them with Melanie, get that back, and then we'll proceed through that process. In the future, what we'll do is basically, you will get the packet ahead of time, and then we'll be able to take positions during the session. There will be times as well, if there are outstanding issues, that, unless there's a time-sensitive sort of deadline that we have to track, that we can also get more information from Melanie, et cetera. So it's a fluid process, but the most important piece is that there are, many pieces of legislation where it is important for us to take a position, and if, again, there is time-sensitive issues, we need to be mindful of that and proceed. So with that, Ms. Wenger, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone, and this is the local bill packet, and I'm going to just describe this to you. But first I wanted to introduce my staff, but just in case some of the new members do not know them. So, where is Kathleen Boucher? Okay, well, when Kathleen arrives, I'll introduce her to you. To my right is Amy Saman, and what we do is we divide up. Obviously, there's a lot of state legislation, there's a lot of subject areas, so we do divide them up accordingly. And Amy does all the alcoholic beverage work, she does environmental work, she does housing, she does permitting. I'm just going to gloss over, this is on our website if you want to go into detail, but you'll find out. Sarah Morningstar is to Amy's left. Sarah's our federal coordinator because, as you know, the Office of Intergovernmental Relations represents the county, which is the council and the county executive at the federal and at the state levels. Sarah dips in on the state side on one particular issue. She covers the public safety issues for us. Otherwise, she does the federal work for us. Leslie Fry. Leslie actually lives in Health and Human Services. That is such I believe, a complex agency that she spends 9 months with Health and Human Services and then comes with us to Annapolis or covers state legislative issues and federal issues with us just in the Health and Human Services area. To my right is Kathleen Boucher. Kathleen does some taxes, environment, the bi-county agencies, education. And then what I do is I cover money. So I'm just pretty much about money. So and I stay abreast of, the kind of larger issues of the day, things like small cells legislation or other things that might not be specific to money but are significant issues to the county and significant activity going on with them at the state level. So,
Thank you, Melanie. Before we move forward as well, I wanted to confirm that Amanda Myhill is going to be our liaison. Yes. She's right there in the audience for our colleagues. It's something new that we're doing, and so she will also provide expertise and be a liaison as well for council members if there are, other particular issues, et cetera. So I think that will also help in the process.
Yeah, and we have worked with Amanda the last couple of years. We have a great working relationship, so we're very pleased that you have lent her in this capacity. So just a little bit about the package in front of you and a little bit about this process. This is the local bill process, and it runs slightly differently than just the state process. When a piece of state legislation comes in, it's read across the desk in Annapolis in January, it's assigned to one of the standing committees in the House or Senate and moves just purely on that back end of the standing committee process. The local process is a little bit different. Typically, we send a memo out after session sometime in May or June, and we solicit information from the executive branch agencies about what pieces of legislation they would like to have the office pursue on their behalf. And so they send in their lists. We take that list to the county executive, then we come to the council and get their approval for it. And those pieces of legislation that are approved by both the county executive and the county council are submitted by our state delegation on behalf of county government. And those bills, there were only 4 this year, except for one that's on this list right now. And most of the time, they seem to be dominated by alcoholic beverages legislation. Not always, but this time they were. And so that's one set of bills. But the bill package that you have in front of you, with the exception of one piece of legislation, are those bills, local bills, bills that only impact Montgomery County, that are submitted by our state delegation members. So I call it, it's like the private sponsor package versus the package that is submitted on behalf of county government that you all have agreed to and the county executive has agreed to. And so this is the package you have in front of you. And what will happen with these pieces of legislation, there are 2 public hearings this year. The first of those public hearings actually took place last night. And the second public hearing will take place on December 17. And in a normal year, let's just talk about a normal year, we would take that package first to the county executive and ask for his recommendations or his positions on the pieces of legislation. And then we would meet with you as we are today and convey his positions to you all and ask you to make decisions, including sometimes we need more information or we want to hear a little bit more what happened at a public hearing, or we are indifferent, and so we're not going to take a position, but typically it's a support or oppose. And as far as we hope that the county executive and the county council, is on the same page with these pieces of legislation. It doesn't always happen, but it typically does. And it's always best when, we can work out any differences ahead of time before we go to Annapolis or before we share positions with the delegation so that they are not left to their own devices to decide, but they have a clear direction from the county government how it feels about a piece of legislation. Sometimes these processes, particularly when we get into the state legislation, things move very, very, very quickly. And so often you'll end up being asked, you'll be polled. We'll literally send an email in saying, we need you by noon today to weigh in or not. The problem when hearings happen and things like that, you want your best foot forward is always to be able to get on the record immediately with what you think, as opposed to sending something later. And again, the time constraints are such, it's a 90-day session. So, and many of you have experience with the 90-day session. Some of you came from there, so you're aware. But that's how the process works. I'm glad to answer any questions now or at a later date about that. But if there are no questions, then we will just go ahead and move through this package. And I'm going to let individual staff, if it's their assigned piece of legislation, because it's their subject matter, I'll ask them to go ahead and take it up. So we'll just walk through that way if that's all right with you,
That's
Council
fine.
President.
Yes.
Okay. So the first piece of legislation that's on our list is a repeat for those of you who have been here for a few years. And Leslie Fry does it.
So Melanie just said that I handle Health and Human Services, but I'm going to talk to you about a bingo bill. That may be confusing, but we actually license bingo in the department. So put simply, this bill would allow over 55 communities such as Leisure World to conduct bingo in their common areas. Currently, only charitable organizations and religious organizations can obtain a bingo license, so this would expand that to these types of communities. There are restrictions on how often bingo can be played and how monetary limits on the winnings and who can play. But in years past, the county executive and the council has supported this bill, and the state delegation is hopeful that it will get out of the Senate this year and make it all the way.
Are there any questions from my colleagues regarding this particular bill? And by the way, we all know that we have those the lights. So this is one that we have supported in the past. Do colleagues feel comfortable going ahead and supporting again, as we have done in the past, and this is a recurring bill?
Move support.
Okay, there's a move, support, and second. Any objection to this particular one? All right, I don't see any objections, so I think that we can support this since something that we have done in the past repeatedly, and the county executive also supports.
All right, Kathleen does elections, so I'll let her take MC 619.
Good morning. So this bill relates to the process by which a person becomes a candidate for county executive or county council, something you're very familiar with. So you'll know that to do that, you file a certificate of candidacy, you file evidence that you've complied with financial disclosure requirements, and you file a form indicating you've established a campaign finance entity and pay a filing fee. So this bill would add some additional requirements and say that each candidate would need to file a petition with a number of signatures. So
Kathleen, can
for-
you move the microphone a little bit? So, yeah, thank you.
Is that better? Okay, thank you. So this bill would require that candidates for county executive or council member file petitions when they're filing for candidacy for office for a county executive. The candidate would need to file a petition with 1,000 signatures. For an at-large council member, a petition with 500 signatures, and for a district council member, a petition with 250 signatures.
I also see Delegate Lutke. I don't know if you want to come forward and just give us a brief synopsis of why you're proposing this particular bill.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. Members of the council, congratulations. Sorry I missed your inauguration yesterday. As you might expect, the genesis of this bill was voters expressing concern during the primary election that with so many candidates on the ballot, it was confusing that they had trouble selecting. I had a lot of voters who told me that they just skipped the council at large race entirely because there were so many candidates. So many states use petition requirements to make sure that the candidates who are on the ballot are serious about campaigning. The exact number of signatures has gotten a significant amount of debate, and the suggestion has been made to match it to the required number of contributions to qualify for public financing, which I think makes sense. But there will likely be extensive discussion of this bill, and I would suggest to the council that you may want to wait until after the hearing on the 17th and the delegations had more chance to talk about it before taking a position.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We do have some lights and some questions. First, Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. I don't think that this is going to limit anything, just in terms of what happened with public campaign finance and the large number of people who actually qualified and got that, let alone the people who didn't qualify but still got very close, who still got a large number of folks to write checks for their campaign. If they're writing checks for their campaign, then they'll easily sign a petition that doesn't cost them any money. And so I don't see that changing. While I do understand the sponsor's intent when it comes to certainly trying to address the concerns of the public, the reality is it's the will of the public to make sure that elections are open to everyone. I mean, and so to set limitations, I don't know if that's necessarily the right spirit for us to be in. I know it's frustrating. I do think it was a nuanced rarity. We've never seen anything like it before, and I don't think we'll see anything like it again, quite honestly. So from that perspective, I just am not sure if it's a necessity for us. I certainly respect the sponsor's response to the general populace. I've heard some of the same concerns and expressed to them that that's what our democratic process is. People are allowed to run for office. And, we need to be very careful about how we're trying to restrict folks from running for office. I don't know if that's necessarily a good precedent for us to set. So from that perspective, I have some concerns about moving forward with this, and think that what we saw was a significant anomaly, something that I don't think we'll ever see again in our county's history. So.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Glass.
Delegate Lutke, I'm glad you're here to help me walk through this bill. And so I understand the concern that helped you originate this bill. But you have another bill that's actually in this packet, MC 2919, talking about voting methods, which I assume is another method to try and tackle this issue of having a large number of candidates, trying to winnow down either the electorate's decision-making process or winnowing down the number of people who qualify for the ballot. So my broader question is, how would you reconcile these two? They're all electoral reforms. I think they're all aimed at the same goal, but we might not need all of them.
Certainly, I mean, they get to slightly different problems. Implementation of an alternative voting system like ranked choice voting or approval voting does not deal with the issue of ballot crowding. And there is political science research that suggests that ballot crowding can be a turnoff to voters. Ballot crowding would also make the implementation of ranked choice voting more difficult. If you can imagine a ranked choice ballot with 33 names and then 33 bubbles next to each name that a voter would have to work through, that would be a near impossible task for me, let alone your average voter who isn't obsessed with politics. So, I think this bill is intended to be a conversation starter. We've had much more time to consider the other bill, and I bear that in mind as we're discussing it.
And with public financing, as Councilmember Rice talked about, with public financing being in the mix and a majority of those who won office in November having participated in public financing, do you think that is a winnowing down, a proxy for getting signatures because you have to meet those various thresholds, whether they're 125 contributors at a district level, 250 at a at-large level, and then 500 for a county executive?
It could be a winnowing down in terms of who's competitive, but you're still on the ballot, even if you don't qualify for public financing. You can walk up, sign the affidavit, pay your $50 or whatever it is, and you're on the ballot even if you do no other work. And so that's what this bill focuses on.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next we have Councilmember Reamer.
All right, thank you, Delegate Lukey. Appreciate your being here and working on a number of reforms to the processes that we use to elect public officials. I think we don't often enough really step back and think about creating optimal systems. And I generally think this one is fine. It's not much of a threshold, but it is a very small threshold that you have to cross to put your name on the ballot if you have a petition requirement. And I think there were a few people in this past election who did not have a sincere intent to campaign for office. And I think that this at least keeps people honest. That's really what this does. You gotta actually get out there and do a little work. And it's not much work. It's not that hard to get a couple hundred signatures or even 1,000 signatures. It's not that hard. But at least there's just a little bit of a test. And so to me it makes sense. Folks might want to take some time to think about it, but again, I think unfortunately, there were some who just did not really intend to run a campaign, and then there is a cost to that. As we've identified, there is a cost to the voter from a person who puts their name on the ballot without a genuine effort to run a campaign.
Okay, Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Eric. Good to see you. I was number 22 on the ballot of 33, and I can say that it's a small miracle I'm up here that people found my name. And I agree with the intent of this bill. I think it makes a lot of sense to have it commensurate and aligned with the public financing thresholds, which we also may take a look at as well. I know I have suggestions on just having run in that system, as I'm sure some of my colleagues do. I think that makes a lot of sense. To Hans's point, or Councilmember Reamer's point, sorry. The level of effort required, it's not just saying I want to run for office and paying $50. It's saying I have community support. I'm willing to work hard to represent the people that I'm talking to. So I don't see it as a barrier. I see it as a threshold similar to public financing. It accompanies that, and I think it's a good idea. We can talk about the levels, but the idea that you can just pay $50 and get on the ballot, many, many jurisdictions have signature and requirements, so I don't think we'll be out of step with anybody in that regard. So I'm looking forward to the public hearings and the discussion about it, but I think it's a good idea. I think we need to move in this direction, and I'm glad that we're looking at these systems. So thank you for introducing.
Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, and Eric, thank you, Eric, for being here. First off, I think that, and I'm not going to repeat what's been said, but ballot crowding is a concern. But that means that someone is going to have to check these names. You're going to have the Board of Elections. Somebody has to pay for all of these types of events. I don't know what you would do for write-in votes. Does that mean that write-in votes would be illegal because someone that was a write-in vote didn't get any signatures? How is that fair? How is that going to work? And when you do it for one office and don't do it for others, that becomes confusing. I mean, you could have the same thing for a state delegate. You could have 20 people run for for the 3 seats. Why, if you're going to do it for the county, why wouldn't you do it for the state? I think all of those things have to be a part of the discussion. I have no problem. I mean, when I ran for mayor of Gaithersburg, you had to get signatures. We didn't have a primary. So that made a difference. And so I think that all of these things have to be thought of, and I agree for the public financing. I participate in public financing as well. You didn't have to worry or do anything to file for the election. You did have to try to get your financing through once you did file, and that makes a difference. But I think that this one, I have no problem doing an election or as something that is consistent through a ballot. But I do have a problem with this one you do it this way and that one you don't do it that way. I think that becomes more confusing for people as well. But I thank you for the thought.
Okay, well, so thank you so much for being here. I will wait for, obviously, the public hearing, and then, once again, colleagues, any other questions that might come up, you can send them to Amanda Myhill, CC my chief of staff, and we'll work it all through, and you will keep us abreast of time, deadlines that we need to watch. Okay, next bill.
The next bill and another one that's very similar, Kathleen's going to talk about, involves the Office of Inspector General and clarifying state law.
So I would just want to mention, Madam President, that the county executive has also taken the same position as the county council on the prior bill for the same reason, expressed initial concerns that many of you have expressed, but also understands Delegate Lukey's perspective that he wants to hear from more stakeholders. So on this next bill, so this bill relates to the county's Office of Inspector General and to the agencies that we call the county's independent agencies. So the county does have an Office of Inspector General that was created in 1997 in the legislative branch. So it's a county council entity. There was a very fascinating policy debate that went on back there as to whether it would be in the county executive, in the executive branch or council, but it is in the council, in the legislative branch right now. And the county has a number of independent agencies, and what we mean when we say that is there's county government, and there's all of our departments and our offices, and then there's Park and Planning, WSSC, the college, MCPS, the Board of Elections, HOC, I think I mentioned the college. And we call them independent agencies because they're not created in county law, they're created in state law. And so when the county wants to modify or deal with those entities, for the most part, we have to go to the state to make some changes. Although for some of those entities, the county has some authority locally, and you'll see that in county code. But I mention that because what this bill does is it says the Office of Inspector General's authority is going to extend now to two of those, in this case, the HOC, and in the other bill, Mel mentioned, to Montgomery College. Now, that may seem like a substantive change initially, but it's not in many ways, because when the county passed its legislation in 1997 creating the Office of Inspector General, it attempted to extend the authority of the Inspector General to all of our independent agencies. And if you looked at the county code, that's what you'd see, that the Office of Inspector General's authority extends to independent agencies. But what the county subsequently learned is really it doesn't have authority to do that unless there's changes at state law. So actually what happened in the past couple of years is that a bill was passed in 2017 to create in Park and Planning its own Inspector General. Another bill passed last year to create an Inspector General in WSSC. So that leaves some of other independent agencies. And so these two bills would extend the IG's authority to HOC and the college. There'd be no changes necessary to our county law, because you've already done that. And then it leaves some interesting policy questions in terms of independent agencies that the IG does not yet have jurisdiction over.
Let's see, we have Councilmember Rice.
So as chair of the Education Committee, I must ask, why not MCPS?
Pardon me?
As chair of the Education Committee, I'm just curious, why not Montgomery County Public Schools as a part of this bill?
It's a very good question, Councilmember Rice. It's because nobody has yet sought that at the state level.
Again, just curious, and I don't see Delegate Kramer here, but I'm just a little curious about Montgomery College, certainly an entity. I mean, look, we've been having this conversation for a very long time. This isn't anything that's new. And we've talked about the fact that we understand and appreciate the fact that Montgomery County Public Schools has its own independent audit entity. that is within, but we've always said in our conversations with our IG that we thought it would be best. We know that they've worked in collaboration on some projects where the IG has investigated, but certainly if we're doing something like this, I don't think that we'd want to leave any entity out. It looks kind of glaring in the sense that why we would pick and choose instead of saying if we view the value of having an IG who's overseeing all of these to certainly ensure that our dollars are always being well invested and well protected, those taxpayer dollars, why we would siphon or separate some of those doesn't make sense to me. So again, I would support something that encompassed all, but to start picking and choosing I don't think is wise for us. It certainly sets a bad precedent from my standpoint.
We'd share that with with Senator-elect Kramer and.
I would note,
Go ahead.
I would note, Councilmember Rice, that's right. That the county attorney, in working with the IG and MCPS, as you well know, has what we've determined is that although there is some audit authority that can be derived from state law that the county government has regarding MCPS, it does not have IG authority. It can't look at contracts. It can't look at performance kind of thing. So that's right. And if council or county executive or legislator wanted to pursue MCPS at this stage, two ways to do it. One could be a local bill just relating to MCPS. Then we'd have to deal with late filed bill issues. The other option, if folks want to consider it, is a statewide enabling bill, which there is no deadline yet, and it would be essentially you could enable any school system or any county to create an Office of Inspector General with authority over MCPS. So two options. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. To that last point, has that bill has never been introduced to your knowledge, this statewide enabling bill?
That's right. Now there has been debates about inspector generals over school systems. The governor last year attempted to create at the state, introduced a bill to create a state level inspector general authority over school systems, and that did not progress. So there have been debates, but no bill specifically relating to MCPS. And beyond the governor's bill, I can't recall recently a discussion.
What I can tell you is that the governor recently appointed a person in his office to do accountability. So, but it's not, it was a specific appointment that he will report to him. And obviously the current conversations are a lot about accountability. So.
And what are the independent agencies that are not included in our IG authority? Just forgive me for not knowing the list.
Well, so the county's IG law refers to independent agencies, and it defines it, and you'll hear that a lot, because when county says independent agencies, it's those state entities. It's MCPS, the college, WCC, Park and Planning, HOC. Used to be the Revenue Authority, but I think we consider that now a local entity in county law, and the Board of Elections. Again, because they're created in state law.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm a broken record on many bills like this, but I'm strongly in favor of this bill. I believe we don't provide enough oversight of the quote-unquote independent agencies created by the state. We vote on their budgets every year. The fact that we don't have oversight authority doesn't make any sense to the public. The public routinely asks us, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? We're frequently approached by whistleblowers and others who have issues with some of those agencies, but we lack robust oversight authority, and I think we need it for any agency where we're voting on their budget every year. This is an artifact of state legislation from many years ago that really needs to be corrected. I don't think our oversight takes anything away from the state's responsibility to provide oversight in this area. I think more oversight is better than less. It is a fact that our able state legislators are limited by the state constitution and by their own budget. They're part-time. They don't have the oversight resources that we have, and as I said, I think more oversight is better than less. So to Councilmember Rice's point, I would support, multiple bills or an omnibus bill, but I don't think the lack of an omnibus bill in this area is a reason not to support this bill, because every year that goes by, we want to look into procurement issues, we want to look into employee issues that come up, and we are unable to. So I'm in favor of this bill, and I'm in favor of more robust oversight of all these agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Why couldn't we request, support with an amendment requesting extension? Is that what you had proposed already, or more or less? I think it's what you were talking towards. Okay, Mr. Rice was going to suggest that. Is there a particular reason why that wouldn't be a normal thing for us to do at this juncture?
You can do that.
We can do that.
We'd have to check, again, the subject matter issue.
Right, whether it's
a
amendable.
single subject at the state level, unlike the federal level where you can put anything in a bill. At the state level, you have to comply with that requirement that it be a single subject. But we could look into
into
whether
that?
or not that may be a violation or would not be. So.
Okay, that'd be great if you could look into that. I think it might have been Mr. Rice said it would seem to stand out if we were enacting these, but not enacting one for MCPS. And people
I would also know that the county executive does support this piece of legislation, and a similar conversation did occur.
Okay, so we can explore this question of how to extend it to MCPS specifically.
Okay, before I turn it over to Councilmember Albornoz, so also, as we go through the bills, can you upfront just let us know
Sure.
whether the county executive
Sure.
is supportive or not? Councilmember Albornoz.
I think in principle, I agree with the notion of this bill. I do think that it's equitable to be able to ensure that the Inspector General covers all the agencies that we're responsible for their budget for. I do have a question. Does the Inspector General, has there been a capacity question raised within the Inspector General's office? Do they have enough staff to be able to extend and coverage of these other agencies?
Can I respond to that very quickly? I mean, as the GO chair, this is something that, we, every year during budget, we have those conversations. We actually have provided additional support to our OIG's office, and if there were to be, bills like these, then we would definitely have a pre-conversation with the executive, but then we will also have another opportunity to provide our Inspector General that capacity, which is so important. Because once, we can't just continue to exercise or set expectations in our out there with our community that, this has been strengthened and then they don't have the capacity. But again, it also speaks to the fact that there will be all these local bills that are really great, but they don't come with any source of funding, which is something else that we have to keep in mind every time we, support things of this nature. But, just wanted to, because, and Mr. Blansett is here, and he's really great at not only using his resources very effectively, but letting us know if for some reason he's going to need, additional funding.
Madam President, I would note, since you noted Mr. Blancett's here, that he worked very closely with Delegate Kramer on, former Delegate Kramer? On the WSSC and Park and Planning bills, was a tremendous resource, and he's, as you can see, very aware of these bills. Yeah.
All right, moving right along, Councilmember Hooker.
Just to add a caveat to my earlier comments, I certainly support an omnibus bill if somebody's going to introduce that. But we all know how the legislative process works. The broader a bill is, the more opponents it's going to have. And especially when you're talking about well-funded agencies that we fund, in many cases, more lobbyists are going to be working against it. So, the approach, I'm for more oversight, but I think practically we have a specific bill in front of us. We need to oversee each of these agencies, and we're more likely to do it with separate bills, although I'll certainly vote for an omnibus one as well. I don't think that the lack of that bill should be seen as a reason not to support this bill or any other individual bill giving us the oversight over agencies that we fund. It doesn't make sense to the public year after year when we tell people that approach us with concerns, yes, I vote on their budget, but no, I can't really do anything to address your concern. That we have to say that every year. It doesn't make any sense. The public expects us to have the authority to exercise oversight, and this bill would do that.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Friedson. But I just want to recap real quickly. I think what I'm hearing is that there seems to be some general support, but there are still questions around whether we should support it with an amendment that MCPS is included. Furthermore, there should be some conversation about what is the best strategy, because if that is not the case, then we can revisit and see whether we will support this, hoping that another bill perhaps can be introduced. So we will not, vote on this particular one or take position, because obviously there's a lot more outstanding questions. But just wanted to recap and make sure that that's what I'm hearing. Okay, great. Councilmember Friedson.
I think that recap reflects my feelings as well. I think, MCPS is obviously not only a huge part of our budget, it's a huge part of the concerns for most residents. Ideally, all would be great, and it would be important, I think, to go back and see what we could do in terms of support with an amendment. So just wanted to echo that. I also want to take a point of personal privilege. I believe it is the director's birthday today. So I wanted to wish a happy birthday to Melanie Wanger.
Thank you. I've had plenty of them. But
We can think of no better place for you to celebrate it. No better place, absolutely.
It's always the priorities hearing, or it's some late night bill hearing, or it's always something. I'm always with you on my birthday.
I was thinking it was a perfect segue to wish you a happy birthday as I reflected the comments of my colleagues of asking you to do more work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can.
Councilmember Glass.
Yesterday at the inauguration, we heard an agenda where we want to do more here in Montgomery County with what we have. And that means making sure that our government is run efficiently and as productively as possible. And I find it interesting to learn throughout this process how many of the agencies we work with, we fund, do not have an IG capacity. And so I want to close those loopholes. That's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do here. And it's the only way we can achieve the goals that this council and the county executive want. And so whatever the legislative process is to do that, let's close these loopholes and make sure we have a clean and well-run government.
Right. We'll circle back on what the options might be. And Councilmember Hucker does raise a good point that you wouldn't want to lose an entire bill by adding something late. So.
Okay, Councilmember Joando.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Melanie. One quick question. I'm assuming you all have spoken to HOC and Montgomery College, or have you? Let me not assume. Have you spoken to them? What do they say the extent of their capacity? Obviously, no one traditionally wants additional oversight. I agree, it's our job to do it considering the budgets. But what have they said to you in light of these bills, or if anything?
Yeah, we have spoken to both Montgomery College and HOC, and essentially they acknowledge that county law attempted to reach them in 1997 and are not speaking against the bill.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
So let me just close as Councilmember Hucker closed by saying, look, from my perspective, again, as chair of the Education Committee, I don't believe that we should be moving forward with something that creates inequities. I don't believe that. I would not support it. I don't think that it's the right thing for us to do, to start picking and choosing which ones. If we're going to do this, we do it for all. That was a mistake that we made before. We didn't do it. We need to correct it now. What Councilmember Glass said is entirely correct. If we're going to talk about the fact of us ensuring that we have this check and balance, it needs to be for everything, including our largest part of our budget. It's the largest half of our budget. And so it boggles my mind that over 50% of our budget is something that we would say, oh yeah, well, we'll just wait and see if that comes in an omnibus bill or an omnibus package or something like that. No, that's the largest part. If we can't even tackle that, why are we messing around with some of the smaller pieces? I mean, it seems very odd to me that we're going after a small entity like an HOC when we've got the huge amount of money. I mean, we hardly invest any money in HOC. And so so I say to myself, that's where we're going to focus on in IG, but we have over half of our budget, and that's not where we're going to have in IG? Just doesn't make sense.
Okay, great. So we will, and did you say that the county executive does support this one?
He
Is that what you
does.
said? Okay, so we will circle back with everybody once we get a little bit more information of some options, and we'll poll my colleagues. Okay, next bill.
Okay, the next bill is actually mine, and it would require a local authorizing law by Montgomery County for, if any state agency, whether it's the Transportation Authority or a different state agency, would build a toll road through Montgomery County. I would note that I believe that the bill sponsor is here. I believe Delegate Carr is here. That there is a similar provision in the state statute for the Eastern Shore, but it would require, in the case of the Eastern Shore, a majority of the shore counties to approve it.
Okay. Let's see, Delegate Carr, anything you'd like to add? And I do want to acknowledge, I see Delegate Moon. I also see Delegate Wilkins, and I do believe I also see right there Povich Carr as well, City of Rockville, and Delegate. Yeah, that's a delegate.
I would also note that the county executive does support this piece of legislation.
Great. Okay, Delegate Carr.
Hey, thank you, Madam Council President. Good to say that again. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Council Vice President, and the rest of you. So, yeah, as you've heard, this bill is a response to constituent concerns expressed about the governor's fast-tracked plans to widen the Capital Beltway, which that's in my district anyway, with 4 additional privatized toll lanes, and the concern people have about the lack of local input. So this bill is patterned after an existing law that's been in place since 1978. Some very small population-wise counties on the Eastern Shore already have this provision. Just give the same provision to Montgomery County. Doesn't say that a new toll road can't be built, but the intent is to strengthen your hand as a county government in negotiating the particulars of how that might work.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Delegate Carr. Did you consider making this analogous to the Eastern Shore approach so that it would be something like a majority of the affected counties, Prince George's and Frederick and Montgomery, would have to approve as the law is written for the Eastern Shore?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Reamer. That's a really good question. The situation on the Eastern Shore is a little unique in that it's really targeted at Bay Bridge crossings, where you have a number of places that a new Bay Bridge crossing might land in a group of tiny counties where you have a majority involved. With this bill and what's been proposed by the governor, you have the first project, which is 270 in the Capital Beltway, that's only in 2 counties, Montgomery and Prince George's County, and then a future project that might affect Montgomery and Frederick. So I could imagine that other counties might want to amend onto this bill to have a similar provision that Montgomery County is gaining, but it really makes sense to have that discussion.
I mean, can you talk about your expectation of support for this bill in the legislature?
Sure. Well, I don't know what will happen to this bill. I mean, it's certainly starting a discussion, and I think it certainly will help to convey to the administration, the very serious concerns from our constituents about this project and the speed at which it is progressing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's an interesting bill. It raises a lot of issues. I think the fight that we really want to have over this proposal is over keeping within existing right-of-ways, making transit a priority in the program. And I worry a little bit that this bill makes us vulnerable in our positioning with the state, that people will look at the county and at the state level and they say, look at that, Montgomery County's trying to get a veto over this whole project. And that could undermine our credibility in pushing for other agenda items that we really think are crucial. So I worry a little bit that this is an overplaying of a hand, and it might diminish our ability to get what we want, which is transit and not taking homes, sticking to existing right-of-ways. Because I think it'll provoke quite a reaction. I mean, it's one thing for us to talk about it here, but when the state, the Maryland Transportation Administration and the governor get a hold of this, they're going to have something to say about it, that's for sure. And they'll want to know why Montgomery County thinks that it should have a veto and not other counties or other things like that. And what is it that we really want? Do we, what? But if it were to be enacted, no question, it'd give us some leverage. So, maybe you could make something happen. But I think it's tricky. I certainly think it's tricky.
Thank you. Council Vice President Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I think this is a good idea, and it certainly gives us the additional leverage, which is something that we all should be appreciative of. The other problem that I see with it is that they could certainly build it without a toll, which though it becomes a little less likely because they have to pay for the whole thing, but that would be one thing. If you don't have the other counties involved, if it started in Frederick County and it comes through Montgomery County and Frederick County says let it be a toll road, then how does that work? Would they just put a toll on there so high you wouldn't be collecting it in Montgomery County, but the funds are going to be there somehow. So if you did it that way, or if they said the reason you have to pay it so high in Frederick County is because Montgomery County wouldn't allow it to come through. What does that do to Hans's point? What does that do to Montgomery County or for what people think of it? So I think it's a good idea to give us the extra leverage. I don't know that this way is going to get us exactly where we need to be. Thanks.
Councilmember Jawando. Did I skip somebody? Jawando, maybe Hucker. Okay, Jawando and then Hucker. Yeah, I think the lights got bumped. That's good.
Delegate Carr, good to see you. Following off Vice President Katz's remarks, have you recruited other neighboring jurisdictions that are impacted, other delegates? I see we've got a pretty broad list of incoming and current delegates from Montgomery County, and I'd also like to know if you've recruited others from our delegation. But just answer that real quickly, if you could, please.
Within our delegation, we have sponsors from a number of legislative districts. It's not hard to predict which legislative districts are going to be most interested in the issue of new toll roads. But our hearing on this bill is going to be on Monday, December 17th, so I expect there's going to be significant discussion among our delegation and among the witnesses.
Yes.
In the neighboring counties or because I think it's important that if Councilmember Reamer brought this up, I like the leverage. I like the local control idea. I think if you polled most of us, we'd probably say we have serious concerns with the proposal as it's been laid out by the governor. And so I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone that we're seeking ways to have more control over what happens in our backyard and to our constituents' homes, et cetera. But I do think it would be important to build a broad coalition, and I'd want to know that before we took action. And in my opinion, I'd like to know I know you guys haven't gotten started yet. You might haven't had the opportunity. But when you talk to people in Frederick, talk to other people that are close enough, I think the idea of local control is the way to sell it. The folks on the Eastern Shore would obviously have to agree. I think this makes sense. If you're going to heavily impact an area, everyone, it might not be you this time, could be you next time, I think is the argument. So I would just encourage you, if you haven't already, to do that, and then I'd want to know that before we approved or disapproved, at least from my opinion.
Councilmember Hucker?
Thank you, Madam President. Delegate Carr, thank you for your leadership on this. I think this is a good bill that we should support. Like any bill, this is a complicated issue, like most bills. This is a complicated issue. This bill is amendable. This is a moving target that we're trying to address, and the legislative session hasn't even begun yet. But I think it's important for this council to be united in expressing its concerns about the governor's proposal, To the point that was made about the unintended consequences of showing opposition to the governor's proposal. The governor didn't consult with us when he cooked up his proposal, and he did not take the suggestions this council has put forth to improve 270 and improve other corridors that we've been suggesting for years. So, you know, the merits of this proposal will be debated in the General Assembly, but I think it's important. We don't have all the votes we would like to have in the General Assembly. It's important our whole delegation, I think, receive a unified message from this council that we have a lot of concerns about the governor's proposal, simply because our constituents have a lot of concerns about the governor's proposal. And this bill can be and will be undoubtedly amended. Delegate Carr may be able to reach an accommodation with other counties. Other counties can put in their own local bills. All that is part of the regular legislative process. But without a bill, we don't have the leverage we need. We don't have adequate leverage now. So we're counting on the delegation to maximize the leverage they have, and without a bill, they're not going to have it. And I think there shouldn't be any confusion. We shouldn't let there be any confusion in our delegation that this council has a lot of concerns about the governor's proposal. So anyway, I support this bill. I know it's likely to change, but I really believe that we need not just this bill, but other bills out there to adequately influence the debate over this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you say the county executive supports this? I couldn't remember. He does. Okay. I tend to agree with Councilmember Hucker. I do believe that we have heard, though, some other concerns and questions. So I don't know if I'm reading correctly that folks would rather at least wait until the public hearing. Is that right, or just to get some more information before? But I think seems to be a general sense that we would support it. Councilmember Reamer, if you can. Comment on this.
Just one last comment. We are hearing from SHA, I guess it'll be Pete Ron. We've invited to come in December, or is it January now? Where's Glen Orland? It's January. So, you know, we have some work to do to come up with our game plan on addressing this whole proposal from the governor. And we've got to work with our delegates and with our senators on a strategy. So, you know, this bill is a proposal from Delegate Carr, thank you. And, you know, we've got a lot of work to do to come up with our entire strategy to ensure that we get what this county wants to get out of this proposal, which is keeping within existing right-of-ways and getting more transportation capacity, and is crucially a transit component for that proposal. So how we're going to get there from here, you know, is going to be just a lot of conversation and a lot of work. And, you know, I think we'll see how this fits in. So, thank you.
Right. I think the operative word here is strategy. And so, you know, as much as we can coalesce around a strategy that does reflect what our constituents have been saying time and time again, I think that's where we want to be. And as you said, however, that blueprint turns out to be, I think we need to be very direct and, you know, adamant about standing up for that particular. I mean, I know during this very long election season, you know, this was an issue that was discussed time and time again out there in terms of concerns. So I'm sure also our T&E, you know, committee will be looking at this as well, and then we can all chime in. So I think what I'm hearing is that we will, you know, wait and get asked some other questions, et cetera, and we'll come up with a particular position. Thank you again, Delegate Carr. Okay, next one.
Okay, the next bill is also Delegate Carr's bill, and Sarah Morningstar is just going to provide the overview of what this bill does.
So this bill was introduced. This is the third time a Don't Block the Box bill has been introduced. The previous two bills were statewide bills. This bill would have local application. For those that aren't familiar with the term, it would prohibit a driver from entering an intersection on a yellow or a green light with the inability then to clear the intersection before the light turns red. Under the violation would have to be seen by a police officer. A citation would be issued by a police officer. It's not automated enforcement. it could be a fine of up to $500 with a point assessed. This would be at intersections that are marked, so they designated intersections would only be the ones that would be applicable under this law. The Baltimore City and the District of Columbia have don't block the box laws with $50 and $125 fines. There was some question about the authority for that, which is being investigated. The police department is concerned or has expressed just some question about having something that would apply strictly to certain intersections in Montgomery County and whether there would be any driver confusion. I think the intent of the bill, though the sponsor is here, is to get at the congestion that's created when people get into an intersection that clearly can't get out before the light turns red.
I'd just like to mention the county executive does support this piece of legislation, but he would like to ensure that there's not the ability to assess a point. And that is how the Baltimore City system works. There's no assessment of a point.
So he supports it, but with an amendment?
The amendment.
Okay. Councilmember Reamer?
I just want to thank Delegate Carr for introducing this and note the comments from the Department of Transportation that this would be useful from the perspective of promoting pedestrian and bike safety. And I don't quite understand the concern about different rules in different jurisdictions within Maryland. I think that is just, I don't get it there at all. You know, a lot of us drive in DC and we don't conform our rules to what people find in DC on the roads there. I think we should do what's right for us. Thank you. I think we should support this.
I do hyperventilate a lot when I'm in DC, and all of a sudden I might be stuck in the box.
No, I've been ticketed there. Yeah, I never did
It's
it
very
again.
stressful. Councilmember Albornoz.
So Delegate Carr and I live very near each other, and the corner section of Knowles and Connecticut Avenue could be the poster child for this legislation. I support this legislation. I do think it will significantly improve that intersection and others very much like it. I agree with the county executive's position regarding the point. I do think some uniformity would be ideal, but in the short term, we need to do everything we can within reason and through common sense to relieve some of the traffic congestion that we have. So I support this.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Delegate Carr. A couple questions. Did you consider talk to me a little bit about why we aren't looking at all intersections, because that's an equity issue that I'm concerned about too. And I know some are more traffic than others, but what was the analysis around, what was that decision?
Yeah, so thank you, Councilmember Jawando. It feels good to say that for that good question. So the history on this is that for 2 years in a row, we had statewide bills on this topic. And I'm also going to be introducing a statewide bill again this year. So both of those 2 years, we passed the House, but we did not advance in the Senate JPR committee. So in the process of having those two statewide bills, we were able to shape the bill and address some of the concerns that we encountered along the way about whether it should be every intersection or just intersections that are marked with a sign that says "Do not block the box." And I think as a compromise of the legislative process, we ended up with that language in the bill that the House approved. So that's why we've kept it in there. And the hope is that we will have a statewide bill, but as a placeholder, as a fallback, we wanted to also have this county bill so that we don't give up an opportunity to have it.
And the other question was the amount of money. I agree on the point. With anything like this, which is aimed at pedestrian and bike safety, which I think is the great goal, let me just state that up front. I think this is needed. To your point, Melanie and Councilmember Navarro, when you get into D.C., you know pretty quickly not to do that, or if you're in a major city. So I think drivers will catch on quickly. I am concerned. I think the amount's a little high. I'm concerned about the point. You know, $500 is a lot for somebody. I would agree with the county executive that the point assessed should be reconsidered. And this is just part of our transition from urban, some suburban to urban suburban. And it's going to be hard for people, but it's where we're heading. So I think that makes sense. I'd also recommend considering a phase-in, a grace period, maybe your first time offense, and obviously that could be dealt with at a later date, but just a suggestion. But I think ultimately this is a good thing. It will help with safety. But those are just some of the points I'd like to raise.
Thanks. And in my conversations with the chief district court judge, I think the number we're going to put into the statewide bill, and likely this bill too, is $90 to be consistent with some of the other laws, not $500.
Okay, Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, Delegate Carr, for this incredibly important initiative. My question is actually for you, Madam President. I know that typically we'll wait towards the end to talk about other pieces of legislation we'd like to see them move forward with. Is that correct?
Well, this is a really great way to start the new council, where we have like 19 bills. And most likely what I will do is ask Melanie to flag those that, either have time limitations or you feel are most important for us to get to. And I'm planning to stop at 12:30. That means we may not get to all the bills. So what I would ask is that just send, my office and also Amanda Hill, whatever other outstanding issues there may be, and then we will communicate directly with Melanie and bring back. Given that this is our first one, it's pretty full, but I want to give all council members, especially, everybody who's new, et cetera, ample time to ask questions, but I, do believe that we have to do a time check as well. So
excellent.
Let's do it. Let's proceed that way.
Well, let me just move very quickly then. Delegate Carr, great bill. The key is that I know that you're also not only trying to achieve traffic flow, but also pedestrian safety. We'll never have true pedestrian safety if we continue to allow people to stand on medians throughout this county. It's a tremendous travesty that has continued to exist. We've seen a firefighter who's been hit in August. We had a person who died in my district in June of this year. I don't know how many more it takes for us to ask the state legislature to give us the authority to ban people from standing in medians. You gave us the authority to do a permit process. The permit process is not constitutional. And so I would just say this is one step, but something that we need, and we heard it from SHA, who testified in front of us, who said it is not safe for people to stand in the medians. They're not designed that way. We have refuge places for them, but they are not designed to stand there for hours on end and run the risk of being hit by vehicles. So while this is an important initiative, we're missing a key glaring component of our Vision Zero and pedestrian safety initiative, which is to stop people from standing in medians. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Following up on Councilmember Rice's comments, if we are to enact Vision Zero, this is an incredibly important part of it. And I'm actually astonished that this hasn't actually either been enacted or hasn't been incorporated into that plan. So I am fully supportive of it, but I have a clarifying question. The intersections, are they only state highway? Are they also county roads? And how do we literally maneuver between them?
So in the bill, it's signalized intersections. So it has to have a traffic light at it. It could be a county road, it could be a state road, anywhere that has a signal.
And
it has to have a signage saying, do not block intersections.
So that would be McDOT who makes those decisions? Taking this a step further, who would determine what intersections, if this bill limits the number of intersections, who makes that determination?
I believe it would be a determination made jointly with MCDOT and our public safety people.
Okay. And alternatively, that decision would be removed if we created this or enabled this for all intersections in Montgomery County. That would be my preference. Thank you.
Yeah, and SHA, wherever it's applicable in terms of who makes the determination. Councilmember, Vice President Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm supportive of this as well. I think for all the reasons that have been discussed, I agree that there should be no point. The fine, I believe, should be lower. If we're trying to educate somebody, sometimes $50 will educate you just as much as $100 or $90, whatever. But the only other concern that I have is if someone does go through on a green light and someone in front of them happens to be making a left turn, didn't anticipate that that person was going to make a left turn. Some of these intersections, there's not that much area between where the left turn is being made, and you know what I'm trying to say on that. So I do believe there has to be good, reasonable thought going into what we're trying to do here. But listen, in Montgomery County, there's not a day that goes by that somebody's not blocking intersections. And as we're seeing, more and more people the pedestrians are being struck. So we have to do something. This is certainly a step in the right direction.
Great. So I think I'm hearing that there is support with some amendments that maybe can be considered. Is that right? Is there any objection to that assessment? Okay, so for that one, we will proceed with support with amendment. Green light, do not block that box. All right, Melanie, can you, I think we have
So we've
45
got-
minutes, so.
Okay, we're going to hurry. How about that? Try to hurry. All right, so
Are there
Catherine's
any
got
that stand out to you that we should get to right now, and then?
There are a couple that I think are
Okay.
more unusual, but if it looks like we're not getting to those, I'll stop and we'll
okay,
move
awesome.
around. Meanwhile, let's just try and see how far we get through the list.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, this next bill, MC 1119, relates to a current law that allows certain golf courses and country clubs to get a special property tax break if they sign agreements with the state that they will essentially keep their golf courses in operation for at least 10 years. The idea there, public policy-wise, that the state is essentially treating these types of golf courses and country clubs as open space for the purposes of taxation. And so under current law, rather than being assessed at market value, which would be the value of developing that property under current zoning, et cetera, they get an assessment of $1,000 per acre, and that's what their property taxes, both state and local, are based on. So under current state law, actually under our Constitution, the classifications for imposing property taxes have to be the same across the state. So that means all golf courses and country clubs have to be treated the same across the state. What Delegate Moon seeks to do here is to first amend our Constitution to allow for golf courses and country clubs in Montgomery County to be treated differently than across the state, and then to say that in Montgomery County, a golf course must comply with our local pesticide law in terms of applying organic pesticides to private lawns. So in terms of the county executive's perspective, we discussed with the county executive that the county attorney has some concerns about the part of the bill relating to our local pesticides law because right now our local pesticide law, which does require this or essentially organic pesticides on private lawns, except in certain circumstances, is on appeal. It was challenged, I think, as probably all of you know. It's on appeal. We lost in the trial court. There were arguments already in the Court of Special Appeals. We don't yet have a decision from the Court of Special Appeals. Depending on what happens there, it may go another level to the Court of Appeals. But the county attorney was just concerned that sort of anything relating to our local pesticide law and what our authority might be or what it might apply to could possibly wind up in some indications of legislative intent that could possibly impact that litigation. So our office did talk with Delegate Moon about these concerns. He understood immediately. I know he's here and can speak for himself.
Yeah,
but,
if Delegate Moon could please join us.
But he did indicate that he is working on amendments that would approach the bill differently to avoid those litigation risks. And if I wasn't clear, the county executive did hold off on making a final decision pending getting a better understanding of what Delegate Moon's amendments would be.
Okay, great. Delegate Moon. All right.
Thank you, Madam President, and welcome to the new council. So this bill, and I think the purpose of it will come a little more clear when you discuss a second bill I have on the same topic. This is really a response to the argument that's being raised that the county should be foregoing $10 million in property taxes that basically all the other property taxpayers are paying for because these clubs are preserving open space for us. And so there will be a series of amendments to this bill, so I think it might be premature. The first is just to nip this issue about, I don't want to mess up the Montgomery County Safe Grow lawsuit, so rather than point to the law that the county passed saying no cosmetic pesticides in this county on private lawns, that did not extend to golf courses, and none of this would be impacted by any outcome in this lawsuit, because basically that's an issue of state preemption. This is the state, and this is a voluntary ask that the country clubs, if they want this tax break, will comply with the county's environmental protections. There will be a second amendment to this bill that adds compliance with county forest conservation rules into this bill. There is a pending issue with Congressional Country Club twice now in the last 5 years, violating forest conservation rules and clear cutting in the dark of night, acres and acres of trees. We only found out about this because of a member at the club whistleblowing on it, and so I don't know what the outcome of that will be. But in the last time they did this, 5 or 6 years ago, the remedy, unfortunately, was not to replant the trees at Congressional Country Club. It was to plant them off-site. I don't know if they did that, but again, I think all of this chips away at the idea that these country clubs are doing us a favor by getting $10 million in property tax discounts by doing some supposed environmental benefit. So anyway, there will be two amendments. One is to remove this lawsuit issue by simply rewriting your pesticide restrictions that the prior council passed into this portion of state law, and then similarly adding a forest conservation requirement. So it might be a bit premature to take action on that, but I'm otherwise happy to answer questions.
Okay, wonderful. I don't see any lights, but I think we will wait for the amendments and then take this up.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Since Delegate Mead is sitting here, if you could turn to page 8, and we'll take his other country club. Yeah,
there's
turn to
another
page
bill
8 and
that Delegate
to
Mead
his other country club bill that you're familiar with, so maybe this can also be discussed very quickly.
Sure. This one will not have an amendment because this is the third try at this that I've had, so I'm hopefully a little bit wiser and wily about how I've crafted this bill. But basically, same issue. We have country clubs that basically don't pay property taxes, and it costs us $10 million a year. I don't know what the budget outlook for Montgomery County is in coming years, but I'm sure that money could be put to good use. So just a very brief history. This exemption applies to clubs that have 50 acres or more, at least 100 dues-paying members, and that are for private club use. The number of clubs in Montgomery County currently receiving this break might be like, I have it here somewhere in specific, but it's about 15 to 19, I want to say. So if you were to completely repeal that tax benefit, it would return $10 million to the county eventually. But that is not what this bill does, because that bill last year to simply repeal it ran into some arguments that we had some small struggling clubs further up north in the county that weren't as well off as the clubs down county. So what this bill does this year is it says, all right, everybody can get this property tax discount for the first $500,000 of land value per acre. After that, you have to pay market. And the idea is you cannot get an infinite tax break from this provision in law. To put it in context, in the entire state, there are only 4 or 5 clubs that are sitting on land worth over $500,000 an acre. They are all in Montgomery County. And within Montgomery County, again, that means of the 19 or 20 country clubs that currently receive this discount, this bill would apply to 4 or 5 of them. So just so you understand, the country club land in Montgomery County can range in value from like $50,000, $27,000 an acre in Darnestown. The clubs that would be impacted by this bill are sitting on land worth over $1.2 million an acre in some instances. And so you have to think about whether that makes sense to you. Now, again, important history here. This was the state forcing the county to give up this property tax revenue through state law. And in fact, in 2002, this issue was debated because ESTAT was about to jack up the assessments on all the country clubs, so they went to the legislature. At that time, they were paying they were being assessed at $5,000 an acre. The legislature in 2002, in its infinite wisdom, changed that from $5,000 to $1,000 an acre. And at that time, the change was opposed by the Maryland Association of Counties, of which Montgomery County is a part, MML, the cities, and ESTAT itself opposed this change. So I'm going to leave you with tons of information here, tax tables and letters of support for full repeal from SEIU, the National Nurses United, Montgomery County Young Democrats, the Sligo Creek Golf Association. You get the idea.
Thank you so much. I do have some lights. Councilmember Rice.
So, Delegate Moon, I wasn't going to bite, but you mentioned Up County, and so I have to just chime in. You know, you're familiar with Montgomery Village Golf Course and what happened there and how tenuous a lot of our golf courses are in the area.
Yeah, most of them, anyone that would claim hardship is going to be out of this bill. I mean, I can tell you the clubs. It's Chevy Chase, Columbia, right. Congressional, Kenwood, and Bethesda. Okay. And mind you, Burning Tree used to have this discount, but the only requirement outside of property assessments that these clubs have to abide by is not to discriminate. Burning Tree decided it wanted to continue discriminating against women, and so it got out of this property tax discount. Guess what? The very next day, it was just able to pay the 10 times higher tax bill that it received. And so you have to look at the clubs that are impacted by this and decide, are these clubs more similar to the ones up county, or are they more similar to Burning Tree? And I would contend to you that Congressional, Chevy Chase, Burning Tree, those are all much more similar to Burning Tree. They could sell half an acre, and of their 300, I mean, this land is worth $3 billion, and it's being taxed at $350,000 assessment. That is less than my house. Which sits on like a fraction of an acre. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
So thank you, Delegate Moon. So I was saying, when it comes to the Up County and some of the challenges that we saw there with Montgomery Village Golf Course, Montgomery Village Golf Course went out of business, and now we have homes that are in its place because they couldn't make the business model work. I certainly appreciate the fact that you assume that you know the business model for these particular country clubs and know what they would do and what their capacity is and what rates they could charge for individuals. I know that in some of these cases they actually have staggered rates. So at places where, and in full disclosure, I am not a member of any country club, but I do know that they do offer some of those rates to some folks in the community who can't afford the top tier rates. Those are challenges that are always there, and they have to make business model decisions. My concern has always been the fairness when it comes to the treatment of country clubs as a whole. And so from that perspective, I'm certainly supportive of a statewide bill that assesses all golf courses the same. But when we're starting to make business decisions that disadvantage Montgomery County businesses in the state, that's a concern of mine. And so I certainly agree with all of the points that you've made regarding folks paying their fair share. But I certainly think that that's something that needs to be addressed at the state level instead of choosing to disadvantage Montgomery County golf courses over other golf courses throughout the state. Because certainly from that perspective, it will mean charging our residents more to pay. And part of that, is, I don't think, is a fairness and equity issue that makes sense for us. So,
if I may briefly address that, the bill, if it were a statewide bill, would impact exactly the same clubs.
But it would be a fairness issue. I mean, we don't have to debate this here, Delegate Moon, but let me just tell you, my concern continues to be a fairness issue. It's not about who it affects. It's about making sure that all folks are affected the same and that there's equity amongst all of them. If we're going to treat our businesses in Montgomery County differently from other businesses throughout the state, that's an issue that we should be concerned about because they also employ people, right? These are people who work there, our groundskeepers, our folks who work there who are greeters and who are checking coats and all. A lot of them are residents. That affects them as well. It affects their ability to get pay increases and all the things that are important. And so from that perspective, again, before we just paint a broad brush in terms of knowing what a person's business model is, let's delve in a little bit more and ask them how it impacts besides just what it means for asking their folks to pay more, because they may not make those kinds of decisions.
Okay, we do have some other lights. I'm sure that this is another one that we will have to come back to, because I know especially our new council members would want to, think through this a little bit more. I do believe that this is an important issue for us to have a conversation about, especially considering many of the items that we all have said we support, like early childhood education, et cetera. So, once again, these are some of the decisions that we're going to have to grapple with in terms of how do we ensure that we are receiving the appropriate amount of revenue for our priorities. Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Madam President. I certainly like this bill, not only because it's sponsored by some of my favorite state lawmakers, but because this is a much simpler issue than I think some of the discussion has suggested. This is simply cleaning up an outdated loophole in our state tax code. And as Delegate Moon ably says, this is something that was imposed by state lawmakers, most of whom were outside Montgomery County, on Montgomery County and other counties. But the disproportionate impact is on our taxpayers in Montgomery County and all the constituents that expect us to provide adequate services. It's a cost shift from a few, as Delegate Moon outlined, a few elite country clubs, not struggling ones, a few elite country clubs, to the rest of us regular old taxpayers who struggle to pay our mortgages and our property taxes every year. But we pay more because we've chosen to subsidize a few elite country clubs. We have lots of unmet needs, as you pointed out. The county exec, I heard yesterday, say he's not interested in suggesting new revenue sources. So if we're going to address any of our unmet needs, the easiest thing for us to do is to close outdated loopholes imposed on us by state lawmakers, most of whom are not there anymore, in Annapolis. We will soon enter the budget season. We will be confronted by multiple agencies telling us they'd like to do more to address one issue after another, but we'll say we don't have the money to do that. And we'll be asked by multiple nonprofits, dozens of them, to provide more services for our constituents, and we'll say, once again, we don't have the money to do that. And I'd ask everybody to remember, if we don't support this bill, that we'll have to explain to everybody why we continue to subsidize a few elite country clubs with the money we could be giving to provide for the unmet needs of Montgomery County. This is, to me, a very simple issue, and I hope everybody supports it.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Delegate Moon. I don't know if it was mentioned, county executive, I'm assuming, supports this bill?
He
said last night.
Yeah, I think, yes, at the end of the day, he's going to support something. We are in the process of getting him a lot of the information that's come up. And it would also allow us to better define exactly what the additional revenue, if the bill passed, would be. So.
You're saying, so we're not clear yet, under the new changes,
Right,
what the revenue would actually be?
Right, so there's discussions underway. There'll be discussions, with Delegate Moon too, but I think certainly at the end of the day, this seems consistent with his philosophy about something.
Right.
And there's a fiscal note that I've requested for a fiscal analysis. Hopefully it should be in our hands before the bill hearing on this, which is 12/17.
And the other thing, I would associate myself with Councilmember Hucker's comments. I think it's ridiculous that you have people that are making this amount of money in our county that aren't paying the taxes on the property. When we have a CIP budget, we have mold in schools, we have a myriad of issues that we're dealing with. I mean, I just think of the bumper sticker, let's give a tax break to country clubs over
that extra 10 million plus whatever the money's going to be. And I think it's so smart of you to include the legislative history, right? The fact that this was a change imposed by the state on taking away and benefiting probably through some lobbying organization or set of people who got up to some state legislators and made it happen. So I would encourage everyone to support it. I think it's not making it unfair to anybody. It's just saying we should all do, and you're actually being generous in some cases, that it's not at the same amount. There is still a tax break. And these are good businesses. I'm glad people work there. I'm not a member of any club. Don't want them to go, but I just want them to contribute to the growing, diverse population that we have and all the needs that we have here. So thank you for putting it forward. Look forward to supporting it.
Okay, great. So once again, council members, just whatever additional questions you may have, just forward them to Amanda Hill, CC my chief of staff, and we'll work with you to get those. And thank you, Delegate Moon. All right, what's next?
Okay, we're going to go to one of the more discussed bills. In fact, I think it dominated the hearing last night for several hours.
Can you put your microphone closer to you?
Yes. We are going to go to the Just Cause legislation. And Amy, what page is that on?
That is on page 5, the bottom of page
5.
It's on page 5. And page 6 as well.
Yeah, there's a lengthy write-up. And I will say...
Can I just go ahead and ask Delegate Wilkins to join us as well?
Yes, and I'll say just immediately, the county executive does support this, but with amendments to ensure that the way that the sponsor described her intent for the bill, that the bill actually reflects that, as in its current form it does not.
Can we ask maybe Delegate Wilkins to describe?
Absolutely. So I'm very excited to be here before you today. Congratulations, everyone. Hello, Madam President, Mr. Vice President. I would also, if possible, like to share the materials from last night's hearing. We actually held the hearing on the bill last night. So if there's a way to get these to you, I come bearing gifts of these materials for you. Okay. So the purpose of the Just Cause legislation is to ensure that no resident in our community, no tenant is evicted without a reason, without cause, and that's evaluated. The bill is not a simple one, but I'm going to do my best in a very short period of time to explain it. So currently, there are 3 ways that a landlord can take a tenant to court here across the street at landlord-tenant court in order to evict them. That is for concerning failure to pay rent, which is pretty straightforward if you haven't paid your rent, breach of lease, which has to be proven in court that the lease was breached and that it was substantial. And then there's a tenant holdover action. And that is what my bill focuses in on. You have a fact sheet there within the folders that provides you with some information about tenant holding over. But what it is when a lease expires, a landlord is able to say that the person cannot continue living there with just 60 days notice without providing any reason. And then if that case ends up going to court and the person is being evicted. When I say evicted, I mean that our sheriff arrives, we put their belongings in trash bags, and we put it in the public right of way. When a judge is making that decision, for a tenant holdover case specifically, there's no requirement to talk about why this person is being evicted. So all that's asked in court is the person on the property? If the answer is yes, and has adequate notice been provided, if the answer is yes, the judgment is then for the landlord. There's no sort of evaluation. And so just to very quickly give you an example, we held a work study during the interim that I chaired, and I invited, all of you should have been invited to participate in those meetings. I want to thank Councilmember Hooker for actually being a member of the work group as well. And one of the people that came and was a participant in the work group, her name was Sharon. She lives in Gaithersburg. She's a 65-year-old grandmother. And at the end of her lease, she was given a 60-day notice for her to leave. She was not provided with any reason. She mentioned that she had made, some minor complaints about parking access and things like that. But when that lease came due, she was told that she had 60 days to leave. She had nowhere to go. So she ended up becoming a tenant holdover in what I described earlier. It actually took her 4 months to be able to find a place to live, and she was actually looking at homeless shelters. But again, when she went to court to be evicted, which leads to her belongings being packed up and put out on the street, nowhere for her to go, When she went to court, all that was discussed was that she was given notice and that she was still on the premises. My bill is raising the bar and saying that a cause has to be provided, and that those just causes are outlined in the bill, in the legislation. You should have a copy of the actual legislation there. So it's things like breaching the lease. It's things like illegal activity on the premises. Things like that. You have to show that just cause. And again, the point is that we really need to safeguard our communities to prevent situations where we have tenants who, for no reason that is stated, are evicted from their homes. And the last thing that I'll mention is that I plan to have, this is a complex bill, it's going to be hard to discuss and have it back and forth in this setting. So you'll be hearing from my office in terms of one-on-one conversations, probably calls at this point since we're going to legislative session soon. So I look forward to delving more deeply into the bill with each of you individually. And I concur with the amendments. You have a list of amendments there in your folder that I've did a line by line with some of the landlords to make some changes, and also I concur with the clarifying change that I've discussed with the county executive.
Thank you so much for your work in this area, Delegate Wilkins. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Delegate Wilkins, for your work. Appreciate it. Just wanted to observe the Office of Legislative Oversight. Sorry, this is just generally for everyone. The Office of Legislative Oversight has done some work on the issue of evictions in Montgomery County, and we are due to review that report and discuss the issue at the council. It was scheduled for a committee review in November, but after discussing that with Councilmember Elrich, who was chair of the Public Safety Committee, where the jurisdiction was divided between Public Safety and Fed, we agreed it would be better to move that discussion to January when the new council members would be here, since the Fed Committee did not have a chance to take it up this fall. So it is, I believe it's on the agenda already for January. If it's not, it will be momentarily. And I think that discussion could be useful for our council members to kind of help get their heads around this. It's a complex issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Delegate Wilkins. I attended one of those work sessions and thought it was very illuminating, particularly the statistics regarding this issue. Are those statistics included in this packet?
Yes, you'll have some in the brief that I believe is on the left-hand side.
Great. I have two questions. One, when I graduated from college, I moved to Bethesda into a group house, and the house was rented to me and my friends by people who were traveling overseas for work. And we were evicted from our house. We were given notice 30 days back in the day when we had 30 days, not only 60 days here in Montgomery County, to find a new place to live. And I'm curious if this bill would have allowed for that transaction to occur.
That is a great question, so thank you so much, Council Member. So the answer is yes. What would happen if this bill were in place is that if the landlord wanted to provide you with that notice, he or she would list the reason in that notice, and that is a just cause for eviction under this bill. If you look at page 3, line 5, no. Yes, line 2, a landlord in good faith seeks to recover possession of the leased premises. So if the landlord, like in your example, wishes to live in the premises, have a family member live in the premises, and wishes for you to vacate, under this bill, they can absolutely still do that. It's just the reason would be provided, and then you would be given your notice to leave.
And the reason I ask the question is I want to be careful that we recognize some of the injustice that occurs with some of the larger complexes here in the county, but also wanting to protect some small investors who might have an apartment or a home that is saving for their retirement, and that their investment is secure. Is there a delineation between a small, modest investor and larger ones?
So I thank you again for the great question. And so one of the things that we did as part of our Just Cause study is that we looked at just causes all across the country. I neglected to mention earlier that New Hampshire State, New Jersey State, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Oakland, they have just cause. There are about 10 to 15 just cause jurisdictions across the nation. So what we did was we looked at the best practices and the trends. And one of the things that we saw was that there was not a delineation in terms of landlords who maybe have one or two units versus the ones that are larger properties. And I would want to be thoughtful if that was the direction we wanted to go into, because I think it can be dangerous having some tenants who we can sort of have this avenue where we can easily evict, but then other tenants, because they live in maybe a larger property, that there's sort of more rigor. So I would be nervous about creating sort of different levels of evictions in that way. But I think that's an important point, and we didn't find a trend among the jurisdictions that we studied where there was sort of a delineation among small number of units versus a large number of units.
Well, I'll share with you that such delineations already exist here in Montgomery County, specifically regarding security deposits. And if you provide a security deposit to a property owner who has more than 5 units, you can get that security deposit back. If you provide a security deposit for a property owner who has fewer than 5, you cannot retrieve that. And I believe the interpretation probably is because that's an individual investor and they've taken it off the market and they've secured it for that person, which then would break that trust. So delineations already exist, might be something you want to look into. Again, I just want to make sure that individual investors here are protected.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Hi, Delegate Wilkins. Good to see you. Thank you for your advocacy on the issue. Good to talk to you the other day about this in detail. I share your concern and tend to be on the side of tenants. and I think we have, especially when we have an affordable housing crisis here in the county, across the country, particularly here in Montgomery County, to the story that you shared. I do not think that's a singular story. I think when people are trying to secure affordable, high-quality housing, it can take longer, it can be difficult, and we want to make sure that folks aren't put on the street. I think I did raise some clarifying concerns and questions with you just about the lawyer in me. When you sign a contract and the contract is up, both the tenant and the landlord have the right under current law to exit and say we want to move in a different direction, and that this would change that dynamic. And I think there might be, just to use the pun, and it is intended, there certainly might be just cause to do that. I would ask if there had been any other suggestions from the landlord, residential, AOBA, whoever, communities that you did not accept in this bill process that they made that addressed that particular financial transaction point. Were there any other suggestions that were made?
Right. So to address your first point, both of them are very useful and very helpful, is that one of our duties as legislators is to safeguard the public. And some of the ways that we do that is that we have requirements among businesses. And if you want to have a license and be a landlord in Montgomery County, in our state, there are certain regulations that are in place and laws that are in place that you have to go by. And that is something that we have, whether it's the health, the safety, and various codes that we have here in our county. So I think that this idea and this additional safeguard, which says that, hey, if you're on the way to putting one of our tenants, a resident in our community, out, then you need to actually provide us with a reason why you're doing that. I don't believe that that is something that is sort of beyond the bounds or disrupting the contract. If a landlord chooses to not renew the lease, they can absolutely do that. They provide that reason. And where this would come to play is that with or without my bill, a landlord would have to go to court to physically evict a tenant. It's a court process. You cannot legally evict without going to court. Where the bill would come into play is that just cause reason is now going to be a discussion in the courtroom, as opposed to what happens currently, which is that the only conversation is about was notice provided, is the person still on the property, which does not do enough to make sure that if someone's being put out, that it's for the right reason. In terms of the landlords, we did have an AOBA representative that was included in the work group. I have made several, pretty much all of the amendments that are before you are changes that I've made as a result of discussions with the landlords. In the testimony yesterday, one of the strong things that came out from the landlords who, just to be upfront, who oppose this, they would rather us focus on retaliations, and I find that to be insufficient. And basically, they would like us to look at our retaliation code and statutes and see how we can beef those up. I find that to be insufficient. I find that to be a, hey, don't look over here, look over there instead sort of posture. And I am also concerned that I believe the only way for us to truly work on our retaliatory evictions code is for us to actually provide and guarantee lawyers for our tenants. Because at the end of the day, if you are bringing a case against a landlord with a claiming retaliation, and you're representing yourself as a tenant, and let's be honest, the tenants who generally are facing these are people, they're people of color, they're low income people, they're people with disabilities, and you're representing yourself, no matter how strong our codes are, against a landlord attorney who does this day in, day out, who knows these laws. I don't think we're going to have a sufficient avenue. So if there's interest in taking up attorneys for guaranteeing them in landlord court cases for our tenants, then I would be on board with looking at that statute. Otherwise, I believe that this just cause legislation is the right direction for us to go in.
And just quickly, thank you for that answer. And I look forward. I'm going to be on the Fed committee unless anything's changed.
Already been announced.
All right, good.
It's official now.
I look forward to talking more in depth about some suggestions that I think will strengthen it. But I think it's the right direction. And thank you again for coming before us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Thank you again, Delegate Wilkins. Appreciate your leadership. Can you just help me understand how you think about the issue of leases? I believe that the tenant law that we passed at the council required the building owner to offer lease renewals. And a lot of our conversation at that time was that a lease is the best protection for a tenant. This approach essentially enables a tenant to have certain protections without being in a lease. And they might decide that they don't want to sign leases. They'll go on to month and rely upon the just cause eviction, I think. So I'm just curious how you think about this, because one of the major provisions of the landmark tenant rights bill that we passed with the leadership of Councilmember Elrich, who I know supports this bill as well, was to push towards leases, to push towards requiring lease renewals to be offered, and that was a big provision. What's your view on that issue in relation to month generally and this legislation?
So I appreciate you raising that. As a member of the Renters Alliance, I was a big part of helping to pass that legislation, and so I'm really thankful that we have that in place, and I actually think it works in tangent with that legislation. Right now, if a lease is up, the tenant doesn't sign, it just goes into a month-to-month lease. And so I think that what would happen when it comes to this just cause eviction legislation, one of the things that has come up is, let's say the landlord wants to raise the rent. This bill doesn't stop the landlord in any way from raising the rent. If a tenant decides not to pay that amount, then what happens is that it goes into the existing statute, which is around failure to pay rent, and a landlord can file under failure to pay rent. That's the current law. So I don't think that I see a way, and I could be missing it, and I'm happy to talk about this more, but I don't see a way that this law sort of disrupts or has any kind of contradiction with what we have done around leases. And you made the exact point that leases are a protection. So when a landlord decides to end that, when a landlord decides that the person has to leave, the lease is up, and that the person has to leave in 60 days, that person is then displaced and without a place to live. So it's important that we add this additional protection and layer that on top of the work that we've already did, the good work that this council has already done. So I think this is an additional safeguard for us. But I'm happy to unpack that more with you. At this point, I don't think I see sort of a contradiction with the current.
Okay. Well, we'll take it up at Fed and we'll work on the issue together. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Rice.
All right. Delegate Wilkins, first of all, I just want to commend you for taking on such a huge task. I mean, this is truly tremendous, and you've made great progress. And so I think this is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to highlight the same thing that Councilmember Reamer did and delve into a little bit more. You are creating an imbalance in the system that currently exists because a landlord currently does have more notice when it comes to determining when that person's going to move out and then when they're going to be able to replace them with another tenant. So once they're in a month-to-month, the protections aren't there for the landlord as much as they were before. I don't have any issues with any of the issues that you've raised in terms of the criteria that are there. I agree with all those things. I just think on the back end, when it comes to it changing over to a month-to-month lease, I think that's where we need to pay a little bit closer attention because you are upsetting the apple cart. You're actually giving 60 days for the tenant, but 30 days for the landlord. And so that's an imbalance that currently doesn't exist right now. And so from that perspective, I hope that through the conversations with Fed and through you, we can come up with something that does create a little bit more of that balance.
Absolutely. We can absolutely take a look at that.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Wilkinson. So I think we'll once again ask for any follow-up questions and then poll our colleagues in terms of taking a position on this particular one. And thank you for your work, very important work. Thank you. All right, so I think we have like 3 minutes before
we don't
break.
have 3 minutes. I think we're finished.
Okay, great.
I would just want to highlight, if you would just jot this down and pay specific attention to 4 pieces of legislation that we didn't get to, and the rest of it I think is really very straightforward here. And we actually had members here. There's a smart meters bill on page 9. It's a WSSC bill. It's 101. It's page 9, 10118.
And Amanda is going to send us follow-up, so
Tell you
not
what,
to worry.
why don't I just work with Amanda and ask
be
her to
great.
send this out, and then when you get a break in the action, grab the packet and pay special attention to those 4 bills. And then the others, I think, are generally quite straightforward. And I guess we'll need to work together to figure out how we close the
process to
loop
use,
on all
yes.
of this.
And our next state ledge, I believe, is January 14th. So we will have time between now and then to, go over whatever other bills may come up. But this right now would be something that we all have as homework.
Right,
In terms of follow-up questions and things of that nature so that we can get back to you on this particular packet.
Yeah, I do want to just highlight that the second of the 2 public hearings is the 17th.
Yes.
So
We need that.
let's have some internal conversation about that. Because those are the public hearings, and it's the time when the public gets to hear what the county has to say about a piece of
Okay,
legislation.
great. So we'll keep that 12/17 deadline in mind. All right, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. All right, guys, we'll be back at 1:30 for public hearings. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started with our afternoon public hearings. And today we have 4 public hearings. So we will begin with item number 4. This is a public hearing on Bill 36-18, Transportation Demand Management Plan Amendments. This bill would expand transportation demand management to reduce traffic congestion and automobile emissions, support multimodalism and achievement of non-automobile travel goals, enhance the efficient use of transportation infrastructure, and promote the sustainability of existing and future development. It will also establish the requirements for a transportation demand management plan for development in certain areas of the county and update the law governing transportation management in the county. A T&E committee work session is tentatively scheduled for January 31st. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business, January 18th. And then for everybody that's testifying today, please bring copies of your written testimony to the clerk at this time. If you would like to follow the progress of a council bill, the council website has a subscribe function. Go to the council website and use the View Council Records and Legislative Updates link to learn how to subscribe. And just wanted to note for this new reconstituted council. Usually during public hearings, we refrain from asking questions because we want to do is listen to our constituents. And of course, during the council sessions, committee sessions is when we can ask all the questions that we want, or we can also send follow-up questions to our people who have testified. So for our first public hearing, agenda item number 4, we have Casey Anderson, Daniel Wilhelm, Bilal Ali, Silk Nuppel, Sherry Muhebi, and Stacy Silver. If you are here for this particular panel, please join us at the table. And also there is a button at the base of the microphone, so when it's your turn, please press that button. And when you are finished, please press it again so you can turn it off and we can hear the other speakers. We'll start with Casey Anderson from the Planning Board.
Thank you. I wanted to congratulate Council President Navarro and Council Vice President Katz on their elections to leadership roles in this council, and also all of the new council members on their joining this group. The Planning Department and the Parks Department and the Planning Board all look forward very much to working with the 19th Council. I have particularly appreciated Council President Navarro's mention in her opening remarks on assuming the presidency of One Montgomery and the idea that we are all in this together. Turning to transportation demand management, our rules governing transportation infrastructure and services have not fully adapted to the maturation of the county's development pattern. And by that I mean, as the county becomes more urban, but retains significant suburban and rural areas, we need to match our transportation planning and exaction schemes to that reality. In the past, the connection between real estate development and transportation has been pretty straightforward. You need to have infrastructure like roads and transit in order to support development. As the county becomes more urban, or at least has significant urban centers, those centers rely more on services, or as much on services in some case as capital improvements. So once you have a transit line, you still have to have the vehicles to serve, to provide the service on that transit line. You may need to increase the frequency of service as time goes on. You may need to use strategies like management of parking in order to deal with congestion in new ways. So this, I think, is an overdue recognition of that fact. We've had transportation demand management districts in the county that are largely in the metro station policy areas and the central business districts, but now we recognize in the SSP that we have substantial urban or urbanizing areas, large suburban areas, and large rural areas that each require different approaches to transportation. And this bill attempts to match up the transportation management scheme to that reality, not just in those isolated locations where there's the most intensive level of development, but also applying transportation demand management to those other areas as well in ways that are different and appropriate to those locations, but in a way that's similar to the way those small areas have been handled in the past. We have some ideas about how to match this transportation demand management idea more closely to the red, orange, yellow, and green areas in SSP, but we can talk about that more at the work session. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Wilhelm.
For the record, I'm Dan Wilhelm, President of Greater Colesville Citizens Association. We're 3,500 houses, for those who don't know, around Randolph and New Hampshire in the eastern part of the county. I want to thank Councilmember Navarro and Katz on your election this morning, and welcome to the 4 new guys to the board, the council. GCCA supports the goals of the bill to expand the transportation demand management to more areas of the county and to streamline the existing process. We, however, feel that the proposed legislation still needs some work, and I identified that in my testimony. I'm going to focus in on only area 2 of my testimony, and you can look at areas 1, the other is at your work session. GCCA feels that the requirement for development projects to submit a TDM plan is too expansive. There is a limited ability to increase non-auto driver mode share. I keep getting twisted up on that acronym. if good public transportation is not available. And as Casey mentioned, there's 4 categories: the red, orange, yellow, and green. And this bill only addresses the first 3. Transit is currently poor in many parts of the orange and yellow policy areas, especially outside the Beltway and not along the I-270 corridor. Therefore, we think the proposed 5% NADMS increase in the draft regulation for policy areas without a master plan requirement is not attainable until good transit is provided. And by this we mean premium transit, which by definition of the subdivision staging policy is the Metro Rail, the MARC, and the BRT. So the local buses is not considered premium transit. In the red category, the areas are small geographic areas, as Casey said, in the urban areas, and already have premium transit. The orange areas are much larger, and I provided a map out of the subdivision staging policy, and premium service is planned. The emphasis is planned. The yellow areas are also large, and some of these areas will get premium transit somewhere in the future. We oppose increasing the NADS requirement for any project employer or building owner where premium transit is not already nearby, and by that we mean 2 miles. We assume that good local bus service is provided within 2 miles of a premium transit station, which would be used to transport people to the premium transit station where the distance is too long to walk. Excuse me. The council applies the same line of thinking at the bottom of page 12 for the resolution dealing with the White Oak Science Gateway Master Plan. It indicates that NADMS goal is based on the area's future transit service and connectivity requirements. You have my testimony.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rowan. Bilal Ali? No? Okay. Silky Knuppel?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Silky Knuppel. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Building Industry Association. Thank you very much for allowing us to provide comments today on Bill 3618. While MBIA supports the initiatives that create a more comprehensive and countywide approach to reducing congestion and vehicle emissions, we have concerns over certain aspects of the bill and would like to offer technical comments for the council's consideration. MBIA commends the legislation for spreading the financial burden and implementation mandate over a broad base, as is appropriate for a holistic policy and efforts to transform the transportation behavior of county residents and commuters, and not just burden new development. As such, we hope to see actual returns on the investments and creative solutions businesses and residential communities are making and keep Montgomery County economically competitive in the region. I am concerned how for sale product will be held accountable for the transportation mitigation plans they are asked to develop under this new bill. It is unclear what objective engineering standards these TDMs will be evaluated against. It notes that the evaluation is at the director discretion, but if there is a disagreement on a mitigation plan, it is unclear as to how that would be resolved and the length of time that would take. It may be appropriate to consider having this evaluation under the discretion of the planning department or director in order to provide for an evaluation and analysis of proposed plans. It appears that a builder or developer will be on the hook for future outcomes long after they have potentially completed a community that they've built for individual homeowners. MBIA believes that the sponsoring committee that receives this bill should think critically about the implementation of this aspect of the bill. The method by which these fees are proposed to be assessed is not directly correlated to the intent of the bill to reduce vehicular traffic and congestion. Instead of assessing by the number of customers, visitors, or employees in a use, would it not be better to relate the fee to the number of vehicles that are generated by a use, or provide credits to someone that actually creates a reduction in the number of vehicles? We offer that for consideration. MBIA suggests that the council consider modifying the timeline so that the execution of a TDM agreement is later in the process, perhaps at the certified site plan or later. Further, by adding additional fees to the cost of development, we fear an unintended consequence could be the reduction of naturally occurring market rate affordable housing, If a multifamily or townhome project is mandated to pay additional fees and possibly be responsible for an ongoing commitment to TDMs in the future, a developer or builder cannot anticipate the full cost of a project or future costs of a project. The lack of certainty, just one more second, the lack of certainty and need to cover possible future expenses related to TMD plans could result in an increase in unit costs and subsequent rent.
Thank you. We have your testimony. We'll
Okay.
read that. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Ms. Knoepel. Sherry Mohabi.
Good morning, Sherry Mohabi. Thanks very much for the opportunity to let us present to the council leaders. Thanks. I'm a resident of Montgomery County for 40 years, and I support the Bill 3618 Transportation Management Plan for Montgomery County for the reason that it will keep Montgomery County options open while proactively reducing the traffic and reducing harmful gases, as well as creating local jobs for hopefully local companies. My comments is for making the stakeholders aware with campaigns such as car-free diet for good, or always, and not like carbon-free diet, but carb-free diets, car-free. And moving off from the singular bus era, that the single person is in a bus, to and a single car era, to maybe providing shared van rides for first, last mile regional rides, shuttles to metro bus hops, and maybe shopping centers, as well as the places of work. And I think this proactive measure of reducing traffic and emission gases will incentivize, hopefully, working towards a connected vehicle car era for Montgomery County. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Ms. Silver?
Good afternoon. It's good to see you all today. My name is Stacy Silber, and I'm a partner with the law firm of Lurch, Early & Brewer. I'm here today in my voluntary role as chair of NAIP DC Maryland's Advocacy Committee. NAIP's members include most of the vertical developers that create communities in Montgomery County and our region. NAIP and its members are very supportive of activities that encourage smart growth and increasing transit, bike, and other modes of transportation to help reduce traffic congestion. We also commend certainty of process of TMAGs and equitable application of the laws. As such, we commend the principles behind 36-18, but respectfully submit that the bill needs some changes to prevent unintended consequences. Our intent today is to provide an overview of our comments. First, we have found that the regulatory carrot works much better than a stick approach in encouraging incorporation of TDM practices. There are several provisions that represent more of a stick than incentives to change behavior. For example, the proposed bill penalizes projects that have bundling of parking. The zoning ordinance addresses this point. One who includes unbundled parking in a development project has an advantageous parking requirement. Thus, we suggest that this provision be removed from the bill and rather reference incentive benefits. Second, the law should not be mandatorily applied to existing businesses. It is a retroactive application of a law which is inequitable and sends the wrong message to businesses looking to invest in the county. Introducing a new fee and requiring a building create space for certain TDM practices is not tenable for many businesses that rely on certainty in budgeting a development and planning public space within a building. We agree that businesses and building owners should be encouraged to participate in TDM practices, and we look forward to working with you and your staff on how this can be accomplished. Third, we support the concept of having the resources to ensure full implementation of a TDM program. However, any requirement for fees must be proportionate and fully vetted before it agreed upon. The bill currently identifies that there will be a fee, but indicates that it will be determined through executive regulation, which currently doesn't identify the fee amount. Before the council considers the appropriateness of a fee, we submit that the fee structure needs to be identified and reviewed fully to understand its impact. Fourth, should a fee be imposed, we submit that the bill should be amended to explicitly state that the funds would go directly to the district within which a development is located and only be applied to specific measures that will reduce traffic congestion. Furthermore, if there are fees, they should be offset by improvements and expenditures required through the TMAG. Fifth, currently the bill suggests that fees may be assessed on the number of customers, employees, visitors, or patients. We suggest this be removed. TDM is used to change travel modes but should not penalize a business's success, and we think that there are other ways in which you can do this. Six, we suggest that the council review what the current average return rate is on surveys. We expect that the proposed 60% return rate is untenable. On behalf of NAAP, we look forward to working with you to refine this bill and improve transportation management in our county. We ask that the record remain open through the work session review process that we understand is targeted to commence on January 31st. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe that the bill sponsor does want to make a comment.
Thank you so much. I just appreciate everyone's testimony. This bill is here today after several years' worth of work that was initiated by my office with Councilmember Berliner as well. And the executive branch worked very hard with Park and Planning to formulate this approach. I think Gwen Wright might have actually been the first person to identify the TMAG issue as one of the remaining major choke points in our development process that would, if we were to address it, would help smooth our regulatory process. But active management of transportation is also an essential part of our ability to move toward a future where we're producing fewer emissions and we're successfully encouraging people to use alternative forms of transportation, walking, biking, shuttles, microtransit, transit, everything. So this bill is very consistent with an overall strategy of moving towards active management of transportation, as well as a specific strategy of trying to have a different approach with development that is clearer, more transparent, and ultimately more effective. A lot of questions raised, and we'll take them up at committee. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. And this public hearing is closed for that item. So now we have agenda item 5, expedited bill 37-18, transit housing, short-term rental license appeals. And the Fed committee work session is tentatively scheduled for January 17th, 2019. There are no speakers for this hearing. Agenda item number 6. This is expedited bill 38-18, weapons, urban area, boundary, public safety committee work session tentatively scheduled for January 17th, 2019. As always, persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on January 14th. For that, we have Tom Major, Chief Tom Major, he's not here. Mark Jones, you're going to play the part of Chief. All right. Aaron Rosenzweig, Steve Schinholzer, and John Barreto. And we will start with Assistant Chief Johnson.
Good afternoon, and congratulations to all.
Jones.
It's okay. It's okay. I've been called worse.
I know you have. I can only imagine.
We only got 3 minutes.
So, good afternoon. I am Marcus Jones, Assistant Chief, Investigative Services Bureau, and I am here to testify on behalf of County Executive Elridge in support of Bill 3818E, Weapons Urban Area Boundary. The Montgomery County Police Department is in favor of Council Bill 3818, changing the boundaries for discharging weapons in an urban area. This bill is common sense legislation as it relates to a growing population in the Burtonsville community over the past several years. Our department has been in contact with community members who are concerned for their safety as it relates to discharging weapons over the past few years. In 2018 thus far, the Montgomery County Department of Police 3rd District officers have responded to the area of Croom Road 21 times for calls for service related to the report of shootings in progress or the sounds of shots. We have initiated 3 police reports related to safety concerns of neighbors. Other law enforcement agencies have also been involved in these investigations as well. Our responses to this area have been during the day and night. Several neighbors have expressed that the shooting taking place from the area impacted and noted in the boundary changes that has regularly awakened them from their sleep. It has impacted their ability to feel safe in their own homes and on their property. During our investigations, it was determined that the area in question is outside of the designated urban area, as the law currently stands, and individuals who possess several licenses issued by the state of Maryland that allow them with certain restrictions to shoot firearms on their property and were not violating any law associated with Montgomery County or the state of Maryland. Therefore, in the best interest of public safety for the greater Burtonsville community, we, the police department, believe the legislation presented in this bill will expand the noted boundaries to give greater comfort to the citizens who reside in the area, while also providing safety from weapon fire permitted by law. Thank you for allowing me to testify and for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Assistant Chief Jones. Aaron Rosenzweig.
Yes, my name is Aaron Rosenzweig. Urban. Merriam-Webster defines urban as of, relating to, or constituting a city. This area is a far cry from a city and is clearly very rural in nature. I oppose this bill for a simple reason. Crum Road is a rural area by any respectable definition of the word. It would be a stretch to consider it suburban and certainly is not urban. The home rests at the end of the road on 6 acres of land. It is surrounded by dense forest and backs up to the Patuxent River. Have you ever seen a home on that much land with that much natural splendor in the heart of a city? I practice safe marksmanship at Waring Station Road in the heart of Germantown. By comparison, this is in the middle of much more suburban sprawl than Crum Road. Will you soon deem Waring Station Road to be urban too? Mr. Jeff Zients says the boundaries of the urban area have not changed in 20 years, as if to say maybe it's time to change them. That only makes sense if the area has become urban, but it has not, so please disregard his statement as being irrelevant. What Mr. Zients does say is that 21 times police were called to investigate the sound of gunfire at Crum Road. Each and every time the police found no wrongdoing, as a homeowner is licensed to use firearms on his property. He also says shots have been heard both during the day and night. What does night mean? Was it 7 p.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning? Mr. Zients says neighbors do not feel safe. How is that substantiated? Many of us understand and move to rural areas because we want clean air, open spaces with natural forests and beauty. Has quickly realized that farms have repugnant smells, noisy animals, and equipment. They then realize that their neighbors may have guns. It shocks them. They want the local government to change things just for them. It's like eminent domain, but worse, because you lose the ability to use your land, but are not compensated for it. Please consider the following methods of addressing the issue. Regulate reasonable hours for the discharge of firearms. If there's a valid reason for shooting after sunset, document it or allow special exception, but otherwise outlaw it. Moreover, the current sound levels are obviously very low. Otherwise, the impulsive noise ordinance for weapons fire would apply. Section 31B-5, noise control. 21 visits of police is wrong. It is a waste of resources and facilitates abuse of power and process. If a citizen phones the same complaint more than 3 times, please fine them for subsequent calls. Institute a cry wolf law. There was no need to expedite this bill, as there is no safety issue. Not even enforceable noise control issue. It is a slippery slope to call a rural area urban because you think it is convenient. Don't do it. Don't take away freedoms unless there is a darn good reason to do so. On the back, I have pictures of the area in hand. You can see it's a very wooded area. And this is also where I practice my marksmanship. It's definitely not urban. And at the bottom, I list the noise control ordinance we currently have, which seems like it should have applied. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steve Shinholzer.
Hello, my name is Steve Shinholzer, and I got to tell you, I'm nervous as hell right now. Congratulations to those of you who got elected, but I'm here to just tell you the nightmare that I'm living. I live 2 houses away from Ron, 16030, this place we're talking about here. He fires his guns 24/7. 4 nights ago, 3 a.m. 2 nights ago, 2 a.m. 4 o'clock the other night, 4:30 the other night, he blasts his guns, single shot, multiple shot, assault weapons. I counted one time in 30 minutes, I'm shaking here, 600 rounds. We live on a road with over 35 houses. We have kids, they ride their bikes, they walk to school, they play on our roads. It's not a big old horse farm. We have a house between me and Ron, and they have little kids that walk to school every day. When I walk to my mailbox or out the back of my property where I get to hike on the WSSC fire trail, he has cameras that shoot down the road and see what everybody's doing. He starts to fire his guns as soon as he sees me, my friends, my dogs, to intimidate us. You try to walk past his house, and he will come out and greet you, intimidate you, holding a rifle, threatening you. I've had hiking buddies for 5-6 years. We go down the end of the road there, and we hike on the fire trail, and he confronts us and screams at us. And we hop over the fence and run. He thinks he's a keeper of the WSSC land. And then on our way back, he sees us coming down the fire trail. He starts firing his gun. I'm not telling you he's firing his gun at us, but he's blasting in the air. My buddies will not even come hiking with me anymore. They won't come over to the house. Kids ride some motorcycles every so often, dirt bikes. He thinks I'm the leader of them, like I organize them. One day when I walked my dog to the mailbox, he comes running up the field across from me at 8 a.m. in the morning, screaming at me about how could I do that to him? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, that noise. I'm like, Ron, that's a dog barking over there. He goes, no, it's not. You hired someone to bark like a dog to ruin my life. He's also told me, my wife, some of the neighbors, that at night, and he says this repeatedly, he thinks we go in the back of his house and make animal noises to scare he and his wife. And he says, well, if it's not you, it's your kids. He drove his dump truck and blocked the road so my kid, 23 years old, just got out of Virginia Tech, couldn't even leave the road. And he comes out and accosts him and accuses him and his sisters, who live thousands of miles away, of making animal noises. I'm 61. I'm going into my golden years and I'm living a freaking nightmare. He could sit here and tell you it's not rural, but I'm telling you, me, my family, everybody on the road, we're scared to death. I am afraid after this hearing, that man's coming to my house and shooting me today. This is not crazy. If it doesn't get fixed, I gotta move. I gotta sell my house. Who the hell wants to buy my house? Would you buy my house to find out this crazy man that shoots guns 24/7 lives there? This is real.
Thank you, Mr. Shinholzer. Thank you so much for being here. John Barreto.
Hi there. My name's John Barreto.
Sorry, can you please turn off your lights, those two? Thank you.
My name's John Barreto. I live at 16000 Crum Road in Burtonsville, Maryland. I'm Steve's neighbor, and I live 3 doors down from the property that is in question today. Thank you to the council for allowing us to speak. This morning, I was awakened by gunfire at 4 a.m. Actually, literally, it was 4:04 when I woke up because of the shots that were out of my window. Couldn't get back to sleep. Went out to walk my dog before work this morning, and at 9 a.m., rapid gunfire all morning until I had to leave to go to work to come to this hearing today. My testimony here, I'm here to testify in favor of changing the urban area boundaries due to the dangerous conditions and the settlement of new families. I'm concerned about the gunfire that takes place recklessly at 16030 Crum Road. I believe as a result of the random shooting on our street and in close proximity to our homes, many lives are in danger, to include families with children and pets. In addition, the property owner that does this shooting has made threats of possible harm due to his ability to freely discharge weapons incessantly. I moved to Crum Road at the end of May 2017. Since that time, I've tried to meet the majority of my neighbors in person. Our neighbor at 16030 has been very alarming. First, to address the gunfire. In the last year, the shooting has taken place at all hours of day and night, daily. The number of rounds being discharged are in such high numbers and rapid succession that they're impossible to count. The gunfire takes place at all hours. Many times he's awakened me from my sleep, as well as kept me from falling asleep. I can hear ammunition bursts at midnight, at 2 a.m., or at 6 a.m. They can also be heard around dinner time. My encounters with this particular neighbor has taken place along Crum Road between my property and his, usually taking my dog for a walk. Based on our conversations, apparently he has cameras mounted where he monitors activity. It seems quite odd to me that when I walk my dog down the road, he walks out towards me, on some occasions holding his rifle in his arms. For example, the most recent encounter with him took place this past Friday, where he became angry and agitated that I was walking my dog to the WSSC property, the path where our Crum Road ends. He began yelling at me in a very loud and angry voice using expletives. Sometimes he stated some of the things that he stated during this rant, I've noted for you. I hunt and kill everything I see. F my neighbors, I'm zoned agricultural. F the police, I don't want to have an accident, so on and so forth. As a result of my direct exposure to the dangerous circumstances on a daily basis, I'm hoping that our county council will consider moving the urban area boundary further away from our homes towards the property line so that 16030 Crum Road will not be allowed to discharge weapons. I believe it would be irresponsible not to do so. The continued use of firearms in our neighborhood could result in bodily harm in the very near future, so it needs to be prevented now. Many times the police have been called due to fear, and unfortunately, upon their arrival, they state there's nothing they can do to keep the neighbor from discharging the weapons.
Thank you, Mr. Barreto. We do have one light on, if you hold on for a second. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you for your testimony, everybody. Just 2 quick questions. Chief, no laws being broken in your estimation, the 21 plus times that you've reported out?
That is correct. Yes, based on the boundaries themselves, the way the current laws state, and as well as state laws, there are no laws that were violated.
Let me be more specific. I mean, some of these seem like threats, battery assault. I don't know if you've investigated these individual claims that were made here today. Is that part of what you've done when folks have come out?
We were dealing primarily to the weapons discharging, not as towards any threats from that aspect.
And to the homeowners on Crum Road, and sir, just to be clear, you do not live on Crum Road. Okay, you're just here as a general policy matter?
I just saw the overview and I didn't have any of this other background either.
Got it. And I've knocked Mr. Crum's door, actually. Have you spoken to him and his wife about this? I know they're further up the street. How do they feel?
Can you please turn on the microphone? And I also do want to remind us that there will be a public safety session in January, so that's
my last
a little
question.
more appropriate. But if you can push a microphone, the button, and then answer the question.
Well, Steve may have more firsthand knowledge, but as far as the Crums are concerned, they have a business where they have people who ride their horses, and the horse people, they ride past my home down the easement to the WSSC property. And those people on horses, at times, they've stated that they are scared, and they've even turned around where they're allowed to legally access that area to go down to the trails.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to the next.
Would you like me to answer or read?
If you have an answer.
Well, yeah, I've talked to them many, many times. So has my wife. And when you talk to Ron, it's not a conversation like two people have. He's like off in his own world. He will not converse with you. She does nothing. She just stands there in total silence. In fact, if you have this conversation, which he did the other day, she'll start just videotaping you and her. So it's not like you can make any rational conversation with him. And it's just
Okay, we're going to wrap up this particular public hearing, and then we'll definitely have more opportunities. And if there are any additional information, you can also submit it to the council. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item number 7. This is a public hearing on expedited bill 39-18, Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, membership amendments. This bill would add 2 members to the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, extend the term of the chair of the council, modify the requirements for a student member, and generally amend the law governing the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. And for this item, we have Mr. Thomas Mannion. Yes, you can proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Mannion. I am the director of the Montgomery County Family Justice Center with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. I also serve as a member of the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, which is the subject of the current bill that we're talking about today. Before I begin, I just want to take a moment to thank all of the council members for your consideration of this bill and for your time today. The Montgomery County Family Justice Center, where I'm honored to serve as the director, has provided critical services to more than 10,000 victims of domestic violence and their families since we opened in 2009. The Family Justice Center is a case study in how public-private partnerships can yield incredible results. With government agencies and local nonprofits working together under one roof to keep victims safe and to hold abusers accountable, we truly understand that no entity, no department, and no program working alone can address the entirety of domestic violence. It requires a collaborative approach. And so, excuse me, the DVCC, which is tasked with addressing all matters related to domestic violence in the county and making recommendations to the county executive, currently has 17 voting members. 11 of those represent various state and county government agencies, and the other 6 represent the general public. So DVCC members recently, under the leadership of our chair, Councilmember Sidney Katz, and our vice chair, Debbie Feinstein, chief of the Special Victims Division of the state's attorney's office, realized that a key perspective was missing from these discussions, and that was that of local non-government agencies. Or non-government organizations, excuse me. So as proven by the successes we've seen at the Family Justice Center, expanding DVCC membership to include these important perspectives is crucial to taking a robust, diverse, and well-rounded approach to combating domestic violence in our community. and I hope you will support this bill. Again, thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for your continued support of the work of the Family Justice Center and for the work of the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, so now we are closing a public hearing. We're going to go into legislative session, day 28, calls of bills for final reading. And we are going to now take up expedited bill 39-18, domestic violence, council membership amendments. And we'll need a motion to move in a second.
I so move.
Second.
The Council Vice President Katz has moved and Councilmember Reamer has seconded. This is a roll call vote.
Can I just say,
Yes,
I just
absolutely.
wanted to agree with Tom Mannion on this. This is a committee that truly does a wonderful job, and we meet 6 times a year. And if you especially for the young person that's the committee member, when they're at one point, most of them were seniors, and well, by the time they got approved, they were almost out of school. So we do need this legislation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Dewando?
Yes.
Mr. Dewando votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes. And that is unanimous. Okay, wonderful. So with that, we are adjourned for the day. Thank you, everybody.